It all begins on a dark, rainy night in the middle of the mountains. A lone warrior stands amidst several bodies, scattered on the ground under the heavy storm. The defeated enemies lie lifeless after the violent clash that just took place. The carnage spreads across the wet earth, revealing the cruelty of that deadly battle. Baek-yong, who screams in pain and exhaustion, his face completely covered in blood. He holds his weapon firmly, even though he is completely worn out from the combat. The swordsman leans on his blade while trying to catch his breath amidst the storm. He became known throughout the continent as the best blade among the wanderers. Baek-yong, who he spent 18 years searching for his family's lost arts, but never liked his title. To him, being considered the best among mere, masterless wanderers feels quite pathetic. After fighting for so many years, that pile of defeated bodies was all he had to show for it. He knows he still has a long journey ahead to successfully rebuild his family's clan. With a sharp gaze, he mentally warns anyone not to try to stand in his way. Suddenly, a noise in the bushes indicates that someone else is slowly approaching. Baek-yong turns quickly upon noticing the arrival of the young lord of the Namgan clan. The newcomer recognizes his opponent's strength, but states that he cannot let him leave there alive. The imposing man before him is Nung Chin-young, the young lord of the powerful Namgun clan. Baek-yong, who he finds it amusing and questions why a young lord would show up in person to fight. The young lord just stares at him coldly and calmly pronounces his opponent's name. He praises the fact that Baek-yong, who he reached the transcendental realm using only common martial arts. While speaking, the young lord begins to unsheath his sword to start the final duel. He confesses that he cannot allow the Baek clan to regain its glory and dominate the martial arts world. Upon hearing that, young Baek becomes furious and calls the enemies cowardly villains. Without wasting time, he propels his body forward, advancing at full speed. Baek-yong shouts, asking if the Namgan clan maintains its great reputation by acting behind people's backs. The swords clash violently, both knowing that only one of them will leave that place alive. The young lord keeps a cold expression, focused on the certainty that this combat will be to the death. Baek-yong, who cracks a blood-stained smile and mocks his opponent's sense of humor. He challenges the enemy to try and truly kill him, charging with total fury into the direct clash. The young lord spits blood, extremely shocked by the devastating power of that sudden attack. Baek-yong also feels the impact of the blow and retreats with difficulty while trying to stand firm. The opponent stares at him, surprised, realizing the battle is much fiercer than he imagined. Baek-yong shows no hesitation and focuses his gaze on the chance to end that dispute. The life or death duel resumes with both warriors colliding in a frightening roar. 2 hours pass and the intense combat continues without either side giving an inch. They exchange over 1,000 fast strikes, lighting up the dark forest with the shimmer of their blades. Every move is precise and lethal as the two opponents try to find a gap in the defense. For long hours, the warriors unleash brutal attacks that would make any ordinary man succumb. At dawn, a scream of agony cuts through the silence, indicating that a decisive blow has finally landed. Baek-yong manages to land the fatal strike, piercing his opponent's chest with his sword. Feeling the blade embedded in him, the young lord admits that he truly lives up to his legendary title. He sheds tears of regret and asks for forgiveness before his last breath of life fades away. The lifeless body collapses to the ground, but Baek-yong shows no pity for him. He finds it pathetic that someone would apologize right before dying after committing so many atrocities. Soon after, exhaustion hits him, and he begins to spit blood due to the severe wounds he received. Gasping, he leans on his knees, feeling his own body is about to reach its extreme limit. Despite the excruciating pain, Baek-yong, who knows he needs to muster his final strength to return home. His mind focuses solely on the desire to return to the old, abandoned estate of the Baek family. He promises himself that he will clear his late father's name before it is too late. With one last effort, he kneels on the firm earth, remaining motionless as silence returns. He feels his strength fading rapidly as he desperately tries to remain conscious. Back Yang, who apologizes to his brother Chu Dao and his late father for not being able to return. He laments deeply for leaving without fulfilling the great dream of rebuilding his family's clan. A mystical and mysterious force appears before him, offering a unique chance to defy destiny. Suddenly, he opens his eyes and finds himself staring at his own face from when he was just a child. The boy looks around, completely confused, not understanding what just happened to him. He realizes he is standing next to a very familiar man and lets out a whisper of astonishment. Young Hoi looks at the great entrance in front of him and realizes he is back at his family's old estate. He remembers he was dying just a moment ago and cannot understand how he ended up there. His eyes shine with the revelation as he tries to absorb every detail of this new reality. Before him is Baek Mu Ryang, who smiles warmly and asks the little boy to call him father. The man encourages his son with affection while little Young Hui remains paralyzed in shock. He realizes he has returned exactly to the day he was adopted by his beloved adoptive father. Young Hai even thinks all of this is just an illusion or a dream before his definitive death. His father gently places a hand on his shoulder and tells him to open his eyes wide and observe. Looking ahead, he sees all the members gathered at the estate, ready to receive him with open arms. He is extremely moved to see his adoptive mother, exuding health and beauty in her youth. Soon after, he spots his younger brother, Haiyan So, who stares at him with a pouty expression. His little sister, Yan Yan, celebrates happily because now she has another older brother in the family. Faced with so much evidence, he finally accepts that, in some unbelievable way, he has returned to the past. The rustling of the bamboo leaves brings a sense of peace he had not felt in many years. He understands that the flow of his destiny has been altered, so he can act according to his desires. Young Hui lets out a sigh of relief, and his eyes fill with a new and powerful determination. He realizes he has been given a valuable second chance to rewrite his entire life story. Young clenches his fist tightly, swearing that this time he will protect all the people he loves so much. He promises in his heart that he will transform his family's clan into the greatest and strongest of all. Seeing his mother healthy and his siblings, still children, fills his soul with deep hope and motivation. His father and the faithful manager Han are also full of life, without any of the problems they would face later. He is absolutely certain that his soul has returned to his body from when he was only 8 years old. Young Hui knows very well that this is the golden opportunity he has secretly waited for. He plans to use all the knowledge from his past life to raise the level of his clan's martial arts. Suddenly, a loud, sudden noise from outside interrupts that beautiful moment of family unity. Heavy footsteps indicate that unwanted and very dangerous visitors are approaching the gate rapidly. The immense main gate is completely destroyed by a brutal impact that scares everyone present. The father immediately steps in front of Yang Hai and demands to know who the pushy intruders are. A thick cloud of dust spreads, revealing the hostile silhouettes of armed and dangerous men. A muscular warrior steps on the wreckage of the gate with extreme arrogance, laughing at the situation. The feared intruder, Guak, announces loudly that he has come to collect a blood debt directly from his father. Yang Hai immediately recognizes the enemy and stares at him with an extremely cold and deadly look. The brute repeats his death threat, surrounded by his henchmen in the main courtyard of the property. He accuses Baek Mu Ryang of having annihilated an allied faction and demands immediate explanations for it. The father is totally confused by the accusation, as he does not understand which blood debt the man is referring to. He defends himself by saying he only punished criminals involved in human trafficking and drug sales. Gua K screams furiously, stating that any attack against his allies is a direct offense to his sect. One of the henchmen smiles maliciously and suggests that they should pay appropriate financial compensation. Yang, whose father is outraged by such audacity, and shouts, not believing the absurdity he is hearing. Young, who he just observes in silence, remembering perfectly that this was the day of the disaster. In his past life, his beloved father ended up severely wounded by the hands of those same cowardly men. Furthermore, all the family's scarce assets were stolen, causing the clan's reputation to collapse once and for all. From that terrible day on, the financial decline and ruin of the family became inevitable. He clenches his fist with extreme fury, promising himself that this time things will be different. The boy steps forward and asks his father for the opportunity to return all the kindness he received. Guok finds the child's attitude strange, while the worried father orders Young, who to step back immediately. He deeply fears that his little adoptive son will end up severely hurt in that clash. The boy tries to reassure him with a confident smile, making the father wonder if he has a plan. Young, asks to be trusted, reminding him that even a young beggar has his own survival tactics. He walks firmly toward the dangerous intruders, leaving his worried father behind. Yang Hoi stares at the brute, mentally swearing that he will not let the history of failure repeat itself. He is totally focused on avoiding all the tragedies and terrible frustrations of his previous life. Suddenly, the boy cracks a friendly smile and greets the invading leader in an extremely warm manner. His father and manager Han are completely dumbfounded and speechless at that unexpected attitude. His mother and younger siblings also observe the scene from the back, not understanding the plan at all. Guok is annoyed by the boy's audacity and barks, saying he is old enough to be his father. But Yang, who he begins to shower him with compliments, flattering his youthful appearance until the brute gives in to his pride. The henchmen begin to whisper among themselves, finding it ridiculous that the boss is being fooled by such a fake compliment. Guok notices the malicious whispering and turns around, in rage, scaring his men in a hilarious way. The henchmen make up excuses on the spot and quickly agree that their boss is indeed very charming. The leader smiles again and compliments the boy's good taste, although he warns that there are still matters to resolve. He warns that cheap flattery will not make his father's great blood debt simply vanish. Calmly, the boy begins to recount that he used to be just a simple beggar wandering the streets. He explains that he was kidnapped by the rival faction and ended up being saved by the heroic Baek Mu Ryang. Upon hearing the words full of gratitude from his adoptive son, the father is extremely moved. Even the ruthless Guok begins to find the attitude of the faction that tried to enslave a child absurd. He admits to his allies' crime, but argues that only his own sect had the right to punish them. Manager Han becomes revolted and barks, questioning if they should simply close their eyes to the crime. One of the aggressive henchmen grabs the manager by the collar, threatening to end his life right there. The minion mocks the poor old man's desperation, while the rest of the family watches everything, terrified. Yang, who continues to observe all the confusion with an impressive calm that belies his age. With a slight smile on his face, the boy suggests an alternative way to resolve that conflict. He offers to reveal a valuable secret in exchange for the definitive forgiveness of that blood debt. The warrior finds the proposal amusing and wonders where such audacity comes from in such a small little boy. He lets go of manager Han and agrees to hear the proposal, promising to respect the boy if the information is real. However, the young swordsman imposes a mysterious condition before opening up to the intruder. The leader of the sect approaches and warns him seriously that lies will result in severe punishments. Little Yang, who just laughs and guarantees that a true man of honor never speaks empty words. He asks the warrior to lean in a bit so that the other men cannot hear his whisper. Guok finally gives in and squats patiently in front of the boy to hear the secret. A cunning glint appears in the boy's eyes as he prepares to land his mental blow. He whispers in the intruder's ear, asking if he is still looking for the spy infiltrated in his sect. Upon hearing that revelation, Guok's eyes widen completely in a state of deep shock. Surprised, he asks how the boy knows about that, and Yang, who makes up that he heard rumors when he was a beggar. He reveals that the traitor has a very characteristic blue snake tattoo marked on his body. This is the official mark used by members of a dangerous rival gang infiltrated into the enemy sect. Yang Hoi then says the spy's name and tells the leader to immediately check the body of Book Aik Sin. Gu AK is outraged, saying that man is his sworn brother and that he had already searched everyone without seeing anything. The boy asks if he had checked their underwear, as he heard that the mark is on the inner thigh. The warrior becomes thoughtful upon noticing the wealth of detail and the seriousness of the little boy before him. He grinds his teeth, feeling his fury grow as he realizes the betrayal may actually be true. Without hesitating, he calls the suspect, Buck Xin, who immediately gets scared by the boss's tone of voice. The subordinate approaches, trembling, and receives a direct and intimidating order to start undressing. Guak screams furiously, ordering his man to take off absolutely all his clothes to be searched right there. The spy stutters with nervousness while Yang, who he watches everything, remembering how huge this confusion was in the past. He remembers very well that the spy infiltrated from the rival gang was none other than Guak's own sworn brother. The leader insists angrily and demands that Buck Xin take off his pants to prove his innocence once and for all. Buck Xin begins to sweat in panic, realizing he no longer has any way to escape that embarrassing situation. He tries to beg while laughing nervously, but Guak does not seem in the least willing to back down on his order. The brute stumps hard on the ground, screaming that those who have done no wrong have absolutely nothing to hide from others. He warns that he will be the only one looking and orders the subordinate again to take off his pants at that instant. The other members of the gang advise their companion to obey before things get even worse for him. Buck Xin grinds his teeth in silence, realizing his disguise was completely ruined by a child. In a desperate move, the traitor pushes his companions and tries to flee, running as fast as he can. Akay screams furiously upon seeing the reaction of escape, confirming that he really was the traitor infiltrated in the sect. The spy runs desperately, knowing his life will be over if he is caught by the betrayed leader. But a huge shadow appears right behind him, making his heart race with pure dread in his flight. Guna reaches him quickly with a leap and grabs him from behind with a fist closed and ready to strike. With a killer look, he guarantees that the traitor will pay dearly for having mocked his trust. The leader unleashes all his fury, dealing a brutal sequence of punches to the traitor in the middle of the courtyard. The afternoon sun begins to shine intensely, bringing a new, calmer atmosphere after that chaos. The traitor is now completely tied up and has his face all deformed from being beaten by his former boss. Guak admits defeat and gives thanks for the help, saying that the Bak clan's blood debt is fully paid. Young Hoi smiles, satisfied, while the big guy takes the opportunity to formally apologize for the insults from before. But little Young Hai interrupts the farewell and warns that the two still have one more matter to resolve. With an extremely mischievous look, the boy prepares to give another one of his persuasive speeches. He explains that the favor of capturing the spy only served to nullify the false accusation of the enemy gang. In sequence, he points to the destroyed entrance and questions how they plan to pay for the destroyed gate. The plaque with the Bak family name lies broken in half on the ground, symbolizing the great affront committed by them. The boy pressures the leader, saying that without a gate, they will be unprotected against muggers and rival factions. With no way out, the big guy hands over a heavy bag full of gold coins as compensation to rebuild the gate. He compliments the boy's impressive cleverness before admitting that the clan has adopted a young prodigy. Inside, the boy celebrates, knowing that his 18 years of experience in the martial world were worth it. The invading gang finally retreats while little Young Huai lets out a victorious giggle. The whole family watches the departure of the enemies, relieved for having overcome that terrible crisis without fighting. He rejoices in managing to break, right from the start, the tragic ties that destroyed his family in the past. Young, who celebrates the fact that he saved his father from severe wounds, changing everyone's destiny for the first time. He clenches his small fist firmly, promising to continue firm in his grand rescue mission. He swears to himself that he will change every single one of the miserable destinies that his family suffered in his past life. The father strokes his adoptive son's head, overflowing with pride that he resolved everything without a single scratch. Manager Han also laughs with happiness for having gotten out of that situation with a lot of money in their pockets. Young, who just smiles awkwardly while his younger siblings continue staring at him with deep admiration. At only 8 years old, little back Yang, Hui has just taken his first great step toward glory. After expelling the invaders, there was no longer any doubt about his definitive acceptance into the Bake clan. However, his younger brother Hyan observes from afar with a jealous and quite irritated expression at everything. The boy refuses to accept that the newly adopted member steals all the attention of his parents and the house. The next day, the routine of training and responsibilities at the family estate is resumed early in the morning. Yang Ho wakes up very early and goes to the central courtyard to begin his rigorous physical and martial training. Focuses his attention on the wooden targets scattered around the place to improve his attack speed. The little warrior unleashes fast strikes in the air, showing that his physical technique is still very sharp. However, he soon begins to gasp, realizing the severe physical limitations of his new child body. He supports his hands on the ground with difficulty, feeling his tired muscles clamoring for a brief rest. Even tired, he jumps and performs a pirouette in the air, landing with extreme lightness and agility on the firm earth. He executes impressive acrobatics, demonstrating an incredible body control for his age. Young Hui lands softly and feels that his new physical body is perfect for training martial arts. He looks at his own clenched fists and is amazed by the lightness of his current form. Because he has no trace of Q deviation, he knows he will reach his previous realm easily. He recalls that in his past life, he suffered a Q deviation that ended up damaging his meridians forever. This time he promises to accumulate his power step by step when he hears the sweet voice of his father calling him. His father approaches with a warm smile while little Yan accompanies him, curious, from behind. The father asks, worried, if he managed to sleep well even though he was in a completely new bed. Yang Hui responds happily that it was undoubtedly the best night's sleep of his entire life. The father then decides that the time has come to make the formal introductions between the adopted siblings. He introduces the serious Bake Yan, and the adorable youngest, Bak Yan, who holds her toy sword. He explains that Han is 7 years old and little Yan is only 5 years old. The little girl smiles from ear to ear and says she found him extremely incredible in the battle the day before. She celebrates very happy for now having another super, heroic older brother to protect her. The boy thanks her for the compliment and hugs the little girl, saying she is the cutest girl of all. Han grumbles jealous at the scene and provokes his little sister by calling her a piglet in a grumpy way. He screams angrily, stating that he will never accept that adopted boy as his legitimate older brother. The father tries to reprimand the son's rebellious behavior, but the boy just walks away with a pout. Young Hui just gives a forced smile, realizing that the brother's difficult personality remains identical to his previous one. He understands that the brother's resentment is natural since he lost his position as first-born son. He remembers that in the other life, he always yielded to his whims for considering him the true blood heir. However, that excessively permissive attitude of the whole family ended up generating serious consequences. Due to excessive spoiling, Heen ended up becoming a perverse and totally corrupt man. However, with this new opportunity, Yang, who is determined to prevent his brother from following that bad path, he vows to fix the boy's spoiled temper and insists on demanding respect as the older brother. The father holds Heen's arm firmly and pronounces his name with a very severe tone of voice. But Yang, he stops him, holding his arm gently, and asks him to wait a moment before fighting. The boy argues with wisdom that it is better to give Heian some time to get used to the novelty. He explains to his father that a severe scolding now would only serve to increase the boy's internal revolt. He promises that he will strive as much as possible to get closer and win his young brother's friendship. The father is deeply moved by his adoptive son's maturity, while the boy plans his tactic. However, the father praises his stance out loud, generating an even tenser climate with the other son. Upon hearing that unfair comparison, Heen bites his lips from pure, accumulated rage in his chest. Young, who realizes the father's mistake in laments, knowing that this will only make the brother hate him even more in their daily routine. The father then announces officially that that the boys must train together for 2 hours every morning. He asks affectionately that they get along, and the little ones accept the order with much joy. Soon after, Yong Ho turns to observe the behavior of his new training partner. Hun so responds with a scorching look and crosses his arms, demonstrating his total disapproval of that. The youngest asks excitedly what they will do first, but Yang Hai decides to walk toward the angry brother. He calls out Heen So's name firmly, making the boy turn his face away in a grumpy manner. The two boys stare at each other directly in the courtyard, initiating a small silent duel of wills. Heen So barks irritably, demanding that he not try to act in a friendly way as if they were close. With all the calm in the world, Yang Hui begins to list in detail the reasons for his new position in the house. He surprises the youngest by stating with conviction that the rightful heir of the clan will always be him. The young one asks if his hatred is because of his humble origin or because of the lack of blood ties between them. He retorts with fury, saying that Uncle Juge belongs to a great noble clan, unlike a mere beggar. Faced with that prejudiced response, Yang Hu just stares at him with a serious and silent expression. The older brother's silence makes Heen So look away, feeling a slight discomfort of guilt in his chest. Young Hu realizes he needs to break that brother's arrogance while he is still a young child. He knows very well that if he does not act now, his brother's tragic and shameful destiny will repeat itself without fail. Young Hu remembers that in his past life Heen So ignored all advice as soon as he took over the family and ruined it completely by indulging in the pleasures of the world. Determined to change this dark future, he clenches his fist with fire in his eyes, guaranteeing to himself that he will not let the same tragedy happen again in this new chance. Suddenly, a loud and repetitive sound begins to echo through the courtyard, leaving Heen So and the little girl completely confused, not understanding what is happening nearby. Yang Hai asks them to stay back and advances in a threatening way, while thinking that a stubborn boy who refuses to listen to others needs to learn the hard way. So lets out a gasp of astonishment upon realizing the sudden approach of his older brother, feeling a strong pressure coming from the boy's frightening determination. Without giving time for any reaction from the boy, Yang Hui lands a precise blow, stating that such a spoiled child really needs a good physical lesson. Yang Hu sighs in relief and satisfaction with the result while Heen So fallen to the ground, tries to catch his breath after having been knocked down so easily in the courtyard. The older one agrees that he was indeed a beggar, but stresses firmly that he was able to feed himself and questions if the spoiled brother would be able to do the same. He continues asking if Hyen So would be able to survive on his own if he decided to cross the mansion's gates right now, without anyone's help or money. Irritated, he questions if the youngest has the courage to insult the influential Beggar Union, which is one of the great sects, and threatens to hit him again if he repeats the offense. While the youngest stutters, frightened, the brother tells him to listen carefully, for no person under the heavens should be considered worthless or despicable. He adds that this rule applies both to him, who was once a beggar, and to the spoiled official successor of the grand and respected Bake family mansion. Yang Hui turns his back, commenting that the youngest probably wouldn't understand that lesson, even if he tried to explain everything in detail one more time. Soon after, he turns around again, extending his free hand while holding his wooden sword with a serious and determined look on the face of a young warrior. So is surprised by the sudden attitude when he hears the older brother order clearly that he pick up his own wooden sword fallen on the courtyard floor. He proposes an agreement where he will do whatever the youngest wants if he loses, but demands to be called older brother forever if he comes out victorious from that clash right there. The small heir of the family stares at the proposal in silence, processing each word of the challenge with a confused and deeply reflective look before his brother. He accepts the challenge, demanding that the promise be fulfilled without excuses, since a man's word is worth more than 1,000 shining gold coins in that world. The family's youngest girl begins to cheer excitedly and shouts for the two to give their best in that dispute that is about to begin before her curious eyes. She adds in a fun way that she will support whoever wins the fight, while the two boys position themselves with their wooden swords, ready for the confrontation. A firm step is taken on the dirt ground, marking the official start of the combat between the two youths who seek to prove their superiority in that training courtyard. Yang Hui knows that to break the pride of someone who hates losing, one must demonstrate an absolute and overwhelming superiority that leaves no room for doubt. Heen so lets out an arrogant grunt of disdain and prepares for the first move, holding his training weapon with all the strength he has in his small hands. He boasts, saying he has been training martial arts with his father for 2 years and claims he would never lose to an ex beggar used to eating leftovers from the street. With a shout of determination, the youngest advances, decided to end that dispute quickly and prove his value before everyone who is watching the duel in the courtyard. The boy arrogantly offers the advantage of 3 free moves, but Yang Ho just says thanks with a mocking tone that irritates the small opponent even more. Faced with that offer, the older brother warns that he won't hold back and begins to spin his wooden sword skillfully and frighteningly for those watching. With an intense blue glimmer in his eyes, the youth prepares to attack, promising to teach an unforgettable lesson of humility to the proud heir of the family. In the blink of an eye, he advances with impressive speed, generating a gust of wind and dust that leaves Hien so completely in shock at the move. Not understanding where his opponent went, the youngest panics until he hears Yang Hoi's voice right next to his ear, whispering in a frightening and provocative way. Desperate upon realizing his older brother's overwhelming proximity, young Hien so tries to react quickly, knowing that if he does nothing, he will be defeated at that very instant. He screams, saying he cannot lose at all, and tries to land a desperate attack, but the blow is blocked without any effort by the opponent's sword. The youngest widens his eyes in complete shock and disbelief to see that his strongest attack was stopped so simply by the rival he underestimated so much. Taking advantage of the total gap, Yang Hui lands a precise blow to the younger brother's forehead, who lets out a scream of pain upon feeling the direct impact of the wooden weapon. Heen so falls to the ground, complaining that his brother should have given the advantage of 3 moves. But Yang Hu just tells the defeated one to get up once and for all. With a provocative smile, he warns that they still have plenty of free time to have a frank and friendly conversation during that intense training session. Rubbing the bump on his forehead with tears in his eyes, the youngest barks furiously, asking where that insolent and pushy boy came from with so much skill. Han so calls him a coward for attacking by surprise, but the older one retorts by asking if he would use this same idiotic excuse in a real battlefield. The youngest shudders with pure red upon seeing the older brother's dark expression and intimidating look, realizing he is not dealing with an ordinary child of his age. Without giving time for more empty excuses, Yang Hui initiates a new sequence of fast attacks, totally ignoring the boy's desperate pleas to stop. On the other side of the courtyard, the little girl cheers happily and prepares to announce the great winner of that unilateral dispute that just happened there. She shouts Yang Hoi's name excitedly as the great champion while the defeated Hien so remains sprawled on the ground, completely exhausted and without strength to react. The older one observes the result with pride, thinking that that overwhelming victory will be enough to establish, once and for all, the hierarchy between the two. He reflects on his brother's silly pride, but compliments mentally the fact that he didn't drop the sword for even a moment, proving to be the true son of his father. Yang Hui makes a silent promise to his father that in this life he will guide his brother along the correct path and tells the lazy youngest to get up off the ground with drama. Hien so gets up the start frightened and runs into his older brother, who warns he is right there by his side, ready to continue training if needed. He advises the youngest, saying a martial here should not give in to pain so easily, but insists on complimenting the fact that he held his training weapon firm. Hien so turns his face, flushed with shame, and grumbles quietly upon receiving that unexpected compliment from the rival who just gave him such a beating in the courtyard. Yang Hu demands a respectful response, and finally manages to get the stubborn boy to accept the defeat and call him older brother with a voice trembling with shyness. Satisfied with the response, he promises to take the youngest to a fun place as a reward, leaving his little sister extremely excited about the possibility of going for a walk. Young, Hui hits his wooden sword lightly against the ground, calling the attention of everyone in the courtyard. He invites little Yayan to join the outing, promising to show her everything about the world outside. The group approaches silently an isolated part of the wall that surrounds the immense property. Suddenly, the bushes begin to move, indicating that someone is trying to pass through there. Little Yayan emerges from the middle of the leaves, spitting out a lot of dust after squeezing through the thicket. So asks the little sister to move back a bit so he can pass through the opening. The boy exits soon after, complaining a lot about being completely covered in dirt and filth. While he cleans his face, irritated, the little girl just laughs at her brother's funny situation. Young, Hui laughs and asks if they never used a secret passage to escape before in their lives. The youngest complains about that sneaky escape, while the little sister finds it all wonderful and fun. He explains he wanted to take them for a walk, but the little one asks if he has coins to spend outside. Young Hui gives a mischievous smile, indicating he already has a perfect solution for that problem. He shows a bag of coins that he managed to take secretly from some visitors the day before. So shows concern, remembering the dangers and the dangerous gangs that walk the streets. The older one guarantees that everything is fine and that he can easily handle any troublemaker. Suddenly, a heavy hand is placed on little Yayan's shoulder, calling everyone's attention. The youngest warns that the little girl is very small and it would be dangerous if they tried to kidnap her in the city. Young Hoi notices the brother's affection for the youngest and notes that he is not a bad person deep down. He reminds his siblings that he knows those streets like the back of his hand for having been a beggar for years. To reassure his younger brother, he reveals that he also hired a bodyguard for the group. The huge and scary warrior Gyu appears before them, displaying his axes stuck in his belt. Keen so immediately recognizes the brute who caused confusion in the mansion some time ago. The giant warrior just stares at the three siblings with a confused and quite suspicious silence. He breathes deeply and asks the boy to explain exactly what is happening there at that moment. The brute complains a lot about having been hired just to serve as a babysitter for 3 children. Young, who retorts, smiling, and reminds him that he should treat him with the due respect they promised before. The warrior sweats coldly upon remembering the pact of loyalty he made with the youth the day before. The boy asks if he will keep his word, protecting the 3 siblings throughout the day. He makes a cute and provocative expression, forcing the giant to make a decision once and for all. With no way to escape the agreement, the man is extremely irritated but cannot counter-attack. He accepts the task begrudgingly, and the 4 finally enter the busy market of the city. The siblings walk amazed through the stalls full of novelties and people on all sides. Little Yao's attention immediately turns to the delicious sweet fruit skewers. She is completely dazzled, and with her eyes shining with joy upon seeing the treats there. The youngest asks the brother to buy the sweets, and he promptly says that she can choose whatever she wants. She runs, excited, while the youngest, Hainso, stays observing, hypnotized another food stall. The aroma of meat skewers grilled on the coals seems irresistible to the young hare. So swallows hard, trying to hide the huge urge to try that delicious meat. Young Hai resurfaces suddenly, extending a succulent meat skewer directly to the youngest. The boy is astonished and asks how his brother knew exactly what he liked best there. He responds, laughing, that he noticed his brother's discreet glances toward the grilled meat stall. The older one encourages the youngest to eat, cause the skewer just came off the fire and is delicious. So bites into the piece of meat, famished, savoring the delicious food at that moment of the outing. The boy chews with full cheeks while the older brother just observes, satisfied. So admits that it is very good, while the youngest says that the sweets are also wonderful. Hai tries to restrain the greedy little sister so she doesn't eat too many sweets before dinner at the mansion. The older one confiscates the treats from the girl, generating a small childish protest in the middle of the street. Yan's diary shows that the day's adventure ended with the group's return to the immense mansion. Their father was extremely furious and grounded everyone for having escaped without permission. However, noble Yang, who took all the blame alone, freeing his younger siblings from the severe punishment. However, Hien surprised everyone by taking a step forward and asking to be punished along with his siblings. Even knowing that the punishment would be quite severe, the little girl could not contain her immense happiness. In the end, the three siblings agreed that that day of adventures had been incredibly fun. The day comes to an end with a beautiful reddish sunset that colors the sky above the family's immense mansion. Night falls lazily while the distant sound of lively conversations begins to echo through the nearby streets. With a radiant smile on his face, young Hai appears to meet again with the giant warrior, Gu. The big guy was eating a bowl of stew quietly and does not seem happy at all with the interruption. The youth approaches sneakily and squats beside him in a very friendly way to start a conversation. Startled by the boy's sudden presence, the warrior chokes on his food and asks what he wants now. Young Hoi says he just missed him, but the brute tells him to stop stalling and get straight to the point. The boy then reveals that he wishes to propose a serious business conversation, leaving the big guy very intrigued. Gyu stares at him suspiciously, not understanding what kind of transaction a child of that age could propose. The warrior almost spits out his food from such surprise upon hearing the shocking proposal the youth just made. He screams, asking if the boy really knows the secret hideout where a rival group hid his silver. Startled by the scandal, the boy tells him to speak softly, and the warrior demands to know how he discovered the secret. Young Hai explains that he heard many valuable rumors while walking the streets in his time as a simple beggar. He points his finger in a provocative way with a smile on his face and invites the big guy to participate in the search. Gyu repeats the proposal surprised, not sure if he should actually agree to partner with the young boy. He questions why the boy sought him out instead of keeping all that valuable silver treasure for himself. Young Hoi says he did it just to get closer to Gu, having heard of his honest and admirable character. The warrior feels awkward, saying he has always been praised for his looks, but never for his fair personality. That the boy laughs at the big guy's reaction, then confesses that he actually heard a very specific rumor about him. The atmosphere at the table grows tense as the hot steam from the noodle soup rises silently between the two. The young man reveals he knows that the sixth son of the Red Bridge sect leader has no official wife to this day. He adds, in a serious tone, that the warrior decided to take in a concubine before marrying formally. The mood changes instantly, and the big guy glares at him with a cold, dangerous look, ordering him to stop talking. Gu warns in a threatening tone that he is no saint, and that the boy is crossing all acceptable boundaries. He stresses, furious, that his patience for jokes and meddling has a very short and dangerous limit. Despite the warrior's intimidating fury, the young man only offers a confident smile, showing no fear. He asks for calm and claims he may have found the definitive solution to the big guy's greatest worry. The warrior is in absolute shock when the young man proposes that he can help him make his beloved a legitimate wife. Young Hai says this while looking directly into the man's eyes, demonstrating total conviction in his bold promise. He remembers that, in his past life, that woman ended up being the spark for a terrible, bloody tragedy in the sect. The sect leader would never accept his son marrying a woman of such humble origins. To increase his power, the leader ended up harming Gu's beloved, triggering massive outrage and a thirst for revenge. The cruel sect leader did not count on one crucial detail that would completely change all of their destinies. The loss of his beloved destroyed the warrior's heart, and he wept bitterly while holding her lifeless body in his arms. Gyu loved her more than his own life, and this tragic event created an insurmountable wall of hatred within the family. A terrible wave of violence and vengeance ended up sweeping through and destroying the influential sect shortly after. The boy knows his young body is limited, so he urgently needs a powerful ally by his side. He plans to win the big guy's loyalty by helping him protect the woman he loves most in the world. Gu AK remains in absolute silence, processing the unbelievable revelation he just heard from that child. With a trembling voice, the warrior finally breaks the silence and asks how all of that would be possible to achieve. He doubts that such a young boy could help him raise his beloved status within that rigid sect. Young Hui reveals that the rival group has poison bombs capable of dealing a fatal blow to his sect. He suggests that the warrior prevent the attack before the enemy can cause an irreparable tragedy for everyone. The big guy is extremely thoughtful and focuses his gaze on the seriousness of the dangerous situation revealed. The boy asks if preventing this conspiracy wouldn't be a great enough achievement for the sect leader. The man clenches his fist, remembering that the boy has already proven to have extremely valuable and accurate information in the past. He knows very well that no one can obtain gossip and secrets better than a clever beggar walking the streets. Realizing the logic of the situation, the warrior finally gives in and accepts the proposal, calling the boy a brat. He warns firmly that he will place his trust in the young man, just this once to see where it leads. Satisfied with the deal, Young, who wears a victorious smile, knowing he now has the perfect ally for his plans. Night finally arrives, bringing a bright full moon that illuminates the silent path of the two. They approach an old wooden mansion that seems abandoned and wrapped in a suspicious silence. Three men in disguise watch the place intently, not noticing the presence of the two intruders watching from afar. The rival group's guards remain at their posts, staying alert for any suspicious movement in the area. One of the henchmen looks around suspiciously, but cannot see anything beyond the darkness of that night. The boy points at the enemies disguised as beggars, finding it ridiculous, and suggests a simple attack plan. Gyu feels insulted by the boy's doubt and questions if the youngster knows how to fight or if he will just get in the way. In response, the boy just shows some small, sharp black stones he holds firmly in his hand. He points to his own head, explaining that in stealth missions, one must use intelligence rather than brute force. Unaware of the imminent danger, one of the enemy guards lets out a long yawn, showing great boredom at his post. Suddenly, the other henchman hears a strange noise and clears his throat, calling the attention of his companions. To everyone's surprise, Young Hai emerges, screaming scandalously and pretending to be just a poor, begging mendicant. The guards jump in surprise at that noisy and sudden appearance in the middle of the dark silence. The henchman approaches, confused and annoyed, demanding to know how that miserable child managed to get there. The henchman pushes the boy rudely, saying this is no place for begging, and tells him to disappear immediately. He insists mockingly, saying beggars should stick together, and asks why they never go out to ask for alms. Yang Hui feigns goodwill and offers a bowl with food that looks terrible for them to share. The smell and appearance of the dish are so ghastly that they make both guards feel instantly nauseous. They reject the offer with shouts, telling him to go away, but the boy pretends to be surprised that beggars are refusing food. With a look of doubt, the young man asks directly, in a provocative way, if they are even real beggars. The boy's question makes both men freeze with worry, fearing that their disguise has been discovered. Worried, one of the accomplices suggests in a low voice to eliminate the child before he causes any bigger problems. The group leader orders them to just kick him out, as killing the boy would draw too much unnecessary attention. The young man's look changes completely, focusing on his targets with a lethal coldness that contrasts with his previous pose. He realizes that the enemies are second-rate fighters and knows he cannot defeat them with pure physical force. However, the boy already has an alternative plan in mind and prepares to use a very clever surprise technique. The guard begins to threaten him rudely, but is interrupted by a small stone thrown in his direction. Spectacular throw makes the bowl of nasty soup hit the distracted henchman right on the head. The man yells in hatred at the mess, while the young villain feigns despair and apologizes in a scandalous way. The boy prepares to deliver the killing blow, compensating for his lack of strength with pure agility. Using a powerful stopping technique, he manages to propel his small body with great speed. He concentrates all the strength he possesses in his hands to ensure the surprise attack is fatal and definitive. In an acrobatic and stealthy movement, the boy jumps toward the guard, who is still trying to clean the mess off his face. The henchman can only widen his eyes in terror as he realizes the swift approach of the small opponent in the courtyard. Yang lands a precise and overwhelming blow that knocks the first guard out instantly with no chance of defense. The man collapses to the ground, letting out a painful moan of defeat while completely losing his senses. The remaining guards panic in absolute terror, seeing their companion being taken down so easily by a child. The henchman stretched out on the ground serves as a warning to the others that this young beggar is not someone to be trifled with. With an air of superiority, the youth asks if they have never heard a famous popular saying in the martial arts world. He reminds them that, in the martial world, one should never underestimate women, the elderly, and especially innocent children. Furious and humiliated, the two remaining henchmen draw their swords, ready to hack the boy to pieces without mercy. Suddenly, a giant hand emerges from the darkness and firmly grabs the head of one of the startled men. Guick appears with a threatening look, telling the henchman to shut up before crushing him against the courtyard floor. The brutal impact generates a terrifying noise, making the devastating strength of the experienced sect warrior clear. The young man praises the sound of the impact, but the big guy only complains about the boy's sadistic excitement in the middle of the fight. He praises the allies' lack of mercy, saying this brutal attitude is worthy of an authentic martial arts master. The big guy remains thoughtful, noting that the enemies were skilled, intermediate-level fighters. He wonders how warriors of that level could have been defeated so easily by such a small brat. With the outside area properly cleared and safe, the two prepare to enter the rival group's abandoned mansion. The defeated henchmen are left tied and gagged on the courtyard floor, so they don't cause any more problems. The immense warrior pushes the wooden door, which creaks, revealing the dark and dusty interior of the hideout. They enter the place and find several large wooden boxes, stacked in the corners of the secret room. The boy notices the impressive number of boxes and suggests they start searching everything as quickly as possible. Guick opens one of the lids, revealing a golden, intense glow that illuminates the surprised faces of the two companions. The warrior praises the boy's cunning for managing to dismantle that enemy plan without even knowing how to fight properly. Young, who he laughs in a convinced and proud way, while his partner finds that enormous arrogance of his somewhat irritating. Ignoring the big guy's judgment, the young hare approaches another box and opens the lid with curiosity. The contents of the box emit a magnificent golden glow that leaves the warrior completely stunned and breathless. He can barely believe what he sees as he comes across an immense fortune in shiny silver bars right there. The man celebrates, knowing that that amount of silver is much greater than any of their initial estimates. The boy proposes an unusual division, where the warrior keeps the dangerous bombs, while he inherits all the silver. The partner complains, saying that division is not fair at all, but the boy asserts that the proposal is quite balanced. He points out mockingly, reinforcing that the precious silver belongs to him, while the deadly weapons go to the big guy. The warrior glares at the boy with a look of deep indignation, but he knows he cannot do much against his rules. The warrior realizes the boy's plan had been laid out from the start, but Yang Hoi offers a golden alternative. He knows Gu's nature is not bad, but he needs to test his character to know if he can really trust him. The boy holds out his hands, feigning helplessness, and says on purpose that the warrior could kill him right there. Yu is extremely surprised and annoyed by the defenseless pose of the youth, who challenges him with provocative words. Yang lies, saying the people at the Bake Mansion wouldn't even care about his absence if he disappeared. He claims that, having been with that family for only a few days, everyone would just think he ran away of his own free will. Guick stares at him with a tense and confused expression, faced with that unbelievable coldness shown by the little one. The boy smiles out of the corner of his mouth, remembering that this would be the perfect opportunity for a crime without any witnesses. The giant warrior just watches him from above in the huge warehouse without showing any reaction of physical violence. He sighs deeply with a saddened countenance and grumbles, irritated by the boy's absurd audacity. The man notices how the youth acts in a totally detached way, risking his own life as if it were worth nothing. To the warrior, the boy's lifestyle resembles someone who is constantly walking on the edge of a razor. He feels an immense aura coming from the boy that reminds him of the most dangerous and fearless wandering warriors in the world. This strange similarity to a hardened wanderer leaves the experienced combatant quite intrigued. He shakes his head to clear away those absurd thoughts and focuses on the reality of their partnership situation. Gyu admits mentally that, for a brief instant, the boy really seemed like a legendary wandering swordsman. Tired of arguing, he accepts defeat and declares that all the silver belongs to the boy once and for all. He emphasizes that, despite being a ruthless outlaw, he would never have the heart to harm a defenseless child. He complains, saying that killing a brat who keeps calling him brother would only bring terrible nightmares at night. Gyu prepares to carry the poison weapons while the youth watches with a satisfied and calm expression. Young Hoi admires the warrior's integrity, noting that he really does have a kind heart deep in his soul. The youth gives a warm and genuine smile upon realizing that his trust test worked perfectly there. Gyu turns slightly, watching the silent attitude of his little companion with a hint of distrust. Suddenly, the boy jumps joyfully onto the giant's back, joking about appearing in his nightmares at night. He mocks his partner, who complains irritably about that clingy and childish behavior on the way back. The day dawns sunny at the Bake Mansion, bringing a new and important revelation for the family leaders. Young He's father and the estate butler widen their eyes in absolute shock at that unusual scene. Before them is a wooden crate overflowing, with silver bars shining under the bright morning light. The butler yells in ecstasy, and the boy's father demands to know where that immense fortune came from so suddenly. The young heir proudly states that he earned the money, leaving the butler dying to know the details of the story. The faithful servant celebrates, saying they will finally be able to repair the mansion, pay off the debts, and take care of the mistress's health. With a playful tone, the boy calls the butler's attention to curb his huge euphoria at that moment. The head of the family looks at the chest full of silver with an expression of deep concern and mystery on his face. He sighs heavily and seriously demands that his son explain that entire unusual situation without beating around the bush. He shows paternal concern, asking if his son got into any danger, but the youth guarantees it was peaceful. The boy says he was accompanied by the powerful Gyu, scaring those present who remember the warrior's invasion. With a mischievous smile on his face, the youth prepares to narrate the entire night adventure in detail for them. The conversation continues calmly while hot tea and delicious snacks are served at the meeting table. Young Hui concludes the story by saying that a true hero must use dirty money to do good and help others. With a bright look of gratitude, the youth reveals he only wanted to return the favor of having been welcomed into the mansion. He offers the fortune to his adoptive father, who watches everything with deep emotion stamped on his warrior face. The patriarch remains in absolute silence, staring at his adopted son with a mixture of pride and amazement in his chest. He admits he should scold his son, but recognizes that the boy's talent and courage are extraordinary. The father reflects that holding back such a brilliant talent just because he is young would be a mistake, and decides to support his future. The three continue talking peacefully in the room, showing that harmony has finally returned to their home. The patriarch guarantees the youth that he will not try to stop his future actions, giving him total freedom of choice. He makes only one single sincere appeal, asking his son to promise never to get involved in unnecessary life-threatening dangers. Young Hoi listens to the advice with attention, feeling the weight of that paternal love and his adoptive father's genuine concern. The boy reflects on how his adoptive father's affection is something constant and precious in both of his lives. He thanks him mentally for that unwavering trust and feels deeply grateful for having such a good family. The patriarch surprises everyone by deciding that the boy should personally manage half of all that silver. The youth agrees immediately, knowing that giving such a fortune to an 8-year-old child is unprecedented. Yang Husi celebrates mentally the fact that he now possesses a generous amount of money to start his plans. He plans to invest this cash with intelligence so that it multiplies as quickly as possible for the clan. Slyly, little Yana peeks through the crack in the door, extremely curious about her brother's activity. She asks with a cute voice what he is writing with such concentration, using the calligraphy brush. The youth offers the sheet for her to read, but the little girl remembers in a cute way that she still doesn't know how to read any words. He tells her proudly that it is a very fun and exciting story written by himself right there. The little girl recognizes the style and remembers that her mother also loves to read many storybooks in her room. The boy lets his writing brush rest to the side while he organizes himself to make the special visit. Yang, who wants his mother's sincere opinion to know if the story he produced really became fun to read. On the table rests the work titled The Tragedy of the Beheaded, which promises to grab the attention of any reader. The Bake clan displays its enormous beauty under the sunlight with its temples and beautiful green trees surrounding everything. A sound of weak, persistent coughing begins to echo from inside the mother's elegantly decorated room. A delicate hand holds a cloth handkerchief against her mouth, trying to contain the painful cough resulting from her illness. Young Hai's mother, named Jung-oh, sighs, tired and weakened due to the terrible chronic illness she suffers from. She is resting in bed when the young hare enters the room quietly, calling sweetly for her. The gentle woman turns around, surprised to see her son there, demonstrating a shine of joy in her tired eyes. She welcomes him with affection and notices that he is carrying a thick stack of important papers under his arms with pride. When questioned about the reason for the visit, the boy says he only wanted to talk and spend some time with her. Yang Hui stares at her with deep tenderness and respect, swearing to protect his mother from any terrible fate in this life. The strong smell of medicinal herbs dominates the environment, reminding him of her fragile health and her tragic passing before. In his previous life, their father spent all the family's savings trying to find a definitive cure for her. The high cost of the treatments caused the family's debts to grow like a huge, never-ending snowball. With the accumulation of debts, the clan went bankrupt and the father became gravely ill from so much sadness after the loss of his wife. It was at this moment of misery that his brother Hien so lost himself to addiction, making curing his mother the top priority. He knows very well that he will need a fortune to hire the best doctors and buy rare medicines in the country. The money he took from the rival gang will help a lot, but he needs a lucrative and constant business for the clan. He brings up the subject by saying he heard about her taste for novels and extends his own manuscript with enthusiasm. She says with a smile that she reads only to pass the boredom in bed, but accepts leafing through her son's story with affection. He hands her the book titled The Bond of Absolute Love, claiming he was inspired by the rumors he heard on the streets. His mother is completely shocked and impressed to discover that her son wrote an entire work all by himself. With a confident smile on his face, Yai waits patiently for the start of the reading and his mother's reaction. She opens the first page of old paper and begins to pass her eyes over the first paragraphs of the narrative. Her reaction of absolute amazement makes it clear that the book's introduction is extremely impactful and brilliant. Impressed by the quality, the woman asks about the text, but the boy just tells her to continue the reading. She rests her hand on the manuscript, trembling slightly from the strong emotion conveyed by the words written there. A beautiful, sincere smile appears on the woman's face, who seems renewed and full of life after reading the content. He asks what she thought of the result, and she praises it with great enthusiasm, saying the work is incredible. She confesses that she became so absorbed that she lost track of time, and praises the originality of that incredible plot. The boy smiles with flimsy excuses, but confesses to himself that he copied a famous, popular work from his future. He remembers that in his past youth, reading stories was his only source of joy in moments of boredom. With an enviable memory of his past readings, the boy manages to rewrite all the lines detail by detail. He thanks the authors of the future mentally for borrowing the work and returns to focus on his mother's opinion. The youth asks if she thinks that manuscript would have any commercial value to be sold in the surroundings. The mother stares at the shelf with a surprised expression, realizing the real commercial intentions of her smart son. He just flashes a complicit little smile, confirming his mother's suspicions that he plans to make a lot of profit from the book. Secret letter is sent in a hurry by the clan towards a respected bookstore specializing in the region. The horse advances at high speed along the dirt roads, hurrying to deliver the important order. A mysterious man wearing a straw hat analyzes the envelope with great interest and distrust on the road. A young woman in a hat and glasses appears at the entrance, asking if this is the Bake family mansion. She observes the huge gate of the place while trying to confirm if she has arrived at the correct address. The girl takes a deep breath to manage to shout really loudly. She calls for the so-called speedy writer, saying she came as soon as she received the letter from the bookstore. The employees in the courtyard are left confused upon hearing a stranger calling out for that name. One of the employees runs to the entrance to ask who she is and whom she is looking for. The young woman insists on knowing if this is the Bake mansion and asks to call the author immediately. From the top of the wall, two boys observe the confusion, not understanding anything that is happening. Young Hai and Han so continue spying, hidden on the strange visitor at the gate. Han so comments that he has never seen that girl before and is curious about the reason for the visit. At this, Hain so looks at his brother and asks if he has gotten into trouble again. The boy remembers that since young Hoi's arrival, the house has never had a calm day. He recalls that on the very first day, his brother collected money from a dangerous man. He also highlights how Yang He's martial arts skills are advanced for his age. Furthermore, he mentions the money taken from the gang, and Yang Hai retorts that he used it for good. Finally, Heen so questions if his brother might be an old monster disguised as a child. Young He is totally shocked to see how accurate the boy was in his reasoning. He tries to hide it with a laugh while acknowledging his younger brother's cleverness. Han so vents, saying that at first he hated the idea of getting an older brother. The boy thought it unnecessary for his father to adopt another son when he already had him in the family. He feared losing the attention, the love, and all the space that before were only his. The boy remembers the jealousy he felt while observing his new brother from afar, but he admits it didn't take long to realize the truth about Yan Hai. He remembers the intense training his brother did daily with the children. Little Yaon complained that the training was too hard and that she couldn't take it anymore. With all patience, Young Ho ordered everyone to stop and go rest for the day. The other boys went inside exhausted, wanting only to take a bath and sleep. Later, during the night, Heen so heard strange noises coming from the backyard. Upon peeking, he saw Yang Hoi training alone in the dark without stopping for a second. Even rotten with fatigue, his brother continued brandishing his sword with total dedication. Hun So was impressed seeing how he resisted the exhaustion using sandbags. Thinking his brother would soon go inside, the boy decided to go back to sleep. The next morning, the sun rose, bringing a new day for the mansion. Han So woke up refreshed and decided to go to the courtyard to do some warming up. But upon opening the door, he noticed something surprising happening outside. He spotted someone in the courtyard training. Since the first rays of the sun, the boy recognized Yang Hui, firm with the sword in his hand. He was shocked to note that his brother spent the entire night training with a real sword. Yang Hui opened his eyes, concentrated, with a shine of pure determination. He unleashed a devastating blow, cutting the air with extreme force. The technique executed by him was of impressive precision. A colossal wave of energy cut through the courtyard with immense power. The force of the attack spread throughout the entire training area, and so recognized the supreme technique of the family, identical to their father's. He realized, surprised, that his brother already perfectly mastered that legendary style. Yang Hai lowered his sword, sweating coldly and demonstrating all his effort. He noticed Hain So's presence and took off the weights, asking what brought him out so early. With a smile on his face, he reached out his hand and offered to train with his brother. So was left speechless, seeing the greatness and kindness of the one he now admired. The boy held his brother's hand, finally accepting Hai with all his heart. Hoi says his brother will master the technique soon and puts the very heavy sandbags on him. So feels the weight of the exercises and realizes deep in his heart what it means to have a real brother. The boy thinks about how he now feels the desire to be proud of Hai to everyone. He even blushes while admitting how incredible it is to have such a reliable older brother. Hai looks at the younger one and gives a sincere smile of satisfaction. The protagonist notes how the boy calls him brother in a natural way, without the rejection of the past. He remembers how in his past life, his former brother despised him and never accepted him. Wanting to enjoy the moment, Hai tussles So's hair in an affectionate way. He laughs and promises to earn more money to buy various delicious things for the younger one. The older one jokes, asking when the boy became so cute and suggests they go for a walk. So is surprised and embarrassed by his brother's sudden affection. The two continue playing in the courtyard, strengthening the bond between them even further. Returning to the entrance of the house, the mysterious visitor continues shouting scandalously for the author. The scene changes to the mansion's reception room, where the two finally sit down to talk. The woman introduces herself as Chu-yong Wool and says, as she came as she read the letter sent to the bookstore. She apologizes for appearing without warning, and Ha replies calmly that there is no problem. Chu-yong Wool adjusts her glasses and stares fixedly at the boy in front of her. The woman confesses to being impressed to discover that the famous author is just an 8-year-old child. She comments that by the writing style, she expected to find an old master with almost half a century of life. Hai thinks to himself that her intuition is sharp, because adding his past life, he was indeed that old. The visitor guarantees she doesn't care about age in business and asks the reason for having received the book. She shows the manuscript and says she knows he didn't send that just for her to read for fun. Hai likes the woman's frankness and decides to go straight to the point without delay. He reveals he wishes to sell his books exclusively in her bookstore. Chu-yong Wool realizes that the boy's intention is really to enter into a business partnership. However, she warns that romances are usually told orally in tea houses and not sold as books. The merchant explains that few people accept paying to buy a physical book just to read. When she says it's hard to predict the profit, Hai interrupts her, guaranteeing he will sell a lot. The boy asserts with total certainty that in the future, people will pay dearly just to read his work. And exactly as he predicted, in the future, the books became a gigantic sales success. The woman taps her fingers on the table, surprised by the young writer's enormous confidence. She asks if he is sure he can keep readers anxious, and Hai smiles. The boy reveals he keeps more than 100 incredible stories, like that one in his head. He adds that all the stories possess the same impeccable quality, leaving the woman shocked. Chu-yong Wool wears an ambitious smile, unable to contain her excitement upon hearing that. She leans over the table, facing the boy with a look hungry for business. The woman's eyes shine as she realizes the immense financial potential before her. Without thinking twice, she grabs the boy's hands firmly in a desperate gesture. Begging for the partnership, the merchant promises to give her best to not disappoint him. She talks non-stop about her merchant intuition, guaranteeing that this will yield a fortune. Hoi feels awkward at the exaggeration and asks delicately for her to let go of his hands. The woman laughs, trying to compose herself, and the boy understands the type of eccentric figure he is dealing with. The image shows the facade of the modest bookstore in the center of the city. The narrator explains that in 10 years, that small business would become a gigantic merchant guild, and the person responsible for building that entire commercial empire would be precisely Chu-yong Wool, who concludes that the rumors about her sharp nose for money were completely true. The woman admits she came personally to the mansion just to see what kind of person the author was. The boy asks if he met her expectations, and the merchant confirms, totally satisfied. She states that the works of the speedy writer will totally change the book market in the future. Therefore, she offers the exclusive partnership at the bookstore, guaranteeing 40% of the profits for him. Young Hoi suggests launching the books in limited editions and autographing only 10 copies for the first buyers. He explains that this strategy will immensely value the copies as his fame grows. Chuyong Wol loves the idea and proposes decorating these special editions with gold threads to charge more. At this moment, Yain places a heavy chest of money right in front of the merchant. The boy offers an investment of 4,000 silver taels for her bookstore. The woman is completely shocked to see that enormous amount of accumulated silver. Taken by joy, she hugs Yang Hoi tightly, saying he is a true blessing in her life. She tries to give him kisses, while the boy shouts desperately, asking to be let go. Shortly after, Yang Hai appears full of lipstick marks, with a traumatized face next to the manager. About to leave, Chuyong Wol bids a happy farewell to her new investor, and he tells her to go away soon. Manager Han comments, surprised at how the boy became a great investor in a matter of moments. Young Hai smiles and promises to write 2 or 3 more new stories to send to the bookstore soon. The merchant leaves on her horse, promising to take care of everything and excited for the upcoming works. She leaves in a hurry, leaving the two watching the dust on the road. The boy reflects that the future leader of the merchant guild really possesses an uncommon presence. He concludes that the woman's determination exceeded all the expectations he had about her. Manager Han approaches and asks curiously how much money the little master managed to get this time. Young Hoi looks at him, not understanding the question about the money. The manager begins to list all the mansion's debts, asking if the amount will cover the bills. The boy thinks to himself that hearing that makes it seem like he is being done by a ghost of poverty. Even so, Yang Hai is happy to see the manager animated and thinks about buying good food for his siblings. The manager begs dramatically for the young master to share his plans with him. A few days pass and suddenly a heavy hand touches Yang Hao's leg. Gu Wake appears, furious, collecting the promise the boy made to help him win over his beloved. The man threatens to dismember the boy if he lied, leaving Yang Hoi dying of fear. Since the boy hadn't left the house for days, the brute lost his patience and ended up kidnapping Yang Hoi. 1 hour before being kidnapped, life at the mansion followed normally in the courtyard. The boys were gathered in the training area under the morning sun. Hen so appeared groaning with fatigue while holding heavy stones tied to his wrists. The boy was trembling all over, trying to keep his posture with the huge weight in his hands. He called for his older brother, not able to take the physical effort anymore. Hun so asked how much time was left while Yang Hui corrected his posture with a piece of wood. Yang Hai told him not to lower his arms and to keep his hips firm so as not to lose balance. The older one explained the secret technique of the Bank family that harmonizes internal and external energy. He detailed how cultivating Q strengthens the body from within while his brother was left not understanding anything. Seeing the boy's confusion, Yang Ho summarized by saying that the more the body suffers, the stronger it gets. Unable to take the fatigue, Heen so simply collapsed onto his back on the ground. The boy complained that he was exhausted while Yang Hoi praised him for resisting for 15 minutes. Yang Hai smiled proudly, saying he was happy that he didn't run away from the hard training. Next, the protagonist himself admitted internally that he also needed a break. Yang Ho dropped the wooden sword and sighed, demonstrating that the training also tired him out. Little Yan looked surprised at her brother, thinking it impressive that he was still standing. The boy thought to himself that no matter how much technical knowledge he had, his current body was still very young. Suddenly, he let out a loud groan of frustration at feeling the lack of physical resistance. Lying on the grass, Yang Ho remembered, frustrated, that in his past life his body was totally different. Heavy footsteps approached the place where the boys were resting. The protagonist remembered that in his past life he had gigantic and imposing muscles. Upon opening his eyes, he came face to face with a muscular figure right above him. Guake displayed his defined muscles, and Yang Hui looked at that impressed. Everyone sat around the man while he showed off his advantaged physical build with pride. Yang Hui greets Guak, trying to be friendly, while little Yan recognizes the visitor from the market. The brute explains he hates noise, so he simply jumped the wall to enter the mansion. Guak criticizes the lack of security in the house, and Yang Hui admits that a master of that level ignores defenses. The man questions if the martial arts of the Back family seem like child's play to the boy. He evaluates that the family style is weak, and Yang Hai agrees, remembering that ancient techniques were lost. The protagonist remembers that in his past life, he himself improved the family's internal energy technique. He had created a powerful cultivation method capable of raising the level of any practitioner. However, in his past life, when he returned with the method, the Black family had already fallen into ruin. The boy remembers with sadness the mansion totally destroyed in the past. He clenches his fist with strength, promising to himself that history will be different. The boy determines to protect his family this time, while Guak calls him back to reality. The man warns with a sinister smile that the two need to go to a place together right now. Without giving time for a reaction, Guak grabs the boy by the clothes, telling him to shut up and come along. He drags Yang Hui at extremely high speed, making the boy scream in pure terror. The man takes a gigantic jump, carrying the boy through the air while he despairs. Yan and Han look shocked while their older brother is carried away screaming. The little girl is amazed to see her brother fly, but Heen tells her to run to call their father. Yang, who is carried at an absurd speed without understanding correctly what is happening. Shortly after, the two appear sitting calmly in an isolated bamboo grove. Uak explains that is his private courtyard, where they can talk without being disturbed. Yang, who recognizes the place near where they ate, and the man finds it strange that the boy did even blink during the flight. The brute comments that children his age usually cry in fear when being carried like that. Smartly, the boy flatters Guak, saying he trusted that such a noble adult would not let him fall. The man changes his expression and gets serious upon facing the boy. He remembers the promise about achieving marriage with his beloved, Rang, and demands an answer. Guake approaches with an intimidating look, placing his hand on the boy's shoulder. The man demands to know exactly what Yang Hai's plan is to make that work out. Yang asks for calm and guarantees he hasn't forgotten anything, since it involves the noble lady. Guake gets annoyed at the boy's audacity in speaking of his beloved in such an intimate way. The boy hides behind flattery, saying that she is also like a sister to him. Next, Yang, who gets serious, analyzing the man's true problem. He knows that Rang is Guak's greatest weakness, and that no one can threaten her. In his past life, her harming made the brood go crazy and destroy an entire sect. Guake vents, saying she has the purest and most noble heart, even though she is a courtesan. He explains that his father wants to force him to marry a noble who would never accept a concubine. The man suffers for not wanting to break his beloved's heart, nor disobey his own father's orders. Guake despairs, not knowing what to do to solve this impossible situation. Yang, who he places his hand on his shoulder to try to calm him down. The boy realizes that Guake's love for Rang is genuine and deep. He understands that it was this overwhelming passion that caused the sect's tragedy in the past. However, Yang Hui knows that the destruction of the sect in his past life was not the work of Guak alone. There was a dark and dangerous figure acting behind all that violence. The true mastermind was her biological father, Yoan Juk, a public enemy of the entire martial world. Yang, who decides he needs to find this villain before he acts and guarantees he has a brilliant plan. The scene changes to a busy street in the city where various people gather. A flashy poster with the portrait of a beautiful woman is glued to the city wall. Curious residents begin to approach to see the content of the announcement. People on the streets ask each other the reason so many people are gathered there. A man reads out loud that a famous courtesan is looking for her biological father. Commoners begin to gossip, questioning the reason a courtesan would want to find her father. A man announces to the crowd about a virtuous and talented courtesan, asking for everyone's attention. He taps his fan while highlighting that refined woman sells only her art and not her body. The announcer reveals, shouting, that the young Rang, 25 years old, is looking for her father. The story released tells that everything happened during the busy Lantern Festival of Lotus. On that day, the little girl was walking happily through life, holding firmly onto her dear father's hand. However, a terrible tragedy ended up happening and changing that family's destiny completely. Enchanted by a beautiful lantern in the shape of a butterfly, the girl let go of her father's hand without noticing. The last sight that desperate father had of his beloved daughter was quick and painful. The image of the little girl faded quickly into the crowd like the flight of a butterfly. Since that sad moment, the young woman has never been able to find her beloved father again in life. Rang expresses her suffering, wishing to see her father at least one time before she dies. The drawing of the beautiful courtesan moves everyone, while the touching story is told to the public. People around are deeply moved and lament the sad separation of the young woman. An old man in a straw hat begins to cry rivers of tears faced with that tragic story. Residents try to console the moved old man, guaranteeing that the girl will find her father. The announcer explains that the father left a unique jade plaque as proof of her identity. He shows the drawing of the object and warns them to look for the back family mansion to find her. The entire crowd is excited, decided to help the young courtesan find her lost father. Young, who he observes the public's reaction, satisfied that his plan has worked so well in the square. The boy knows that news travels fast, that it is only a matter of time until her father appears. While the boy boasts of his own plan, Rang cries on the side, taken by emotion. The lady laments the 20 years of separation and hopes from the bottom of her heart for the two to reunite. The boy looks at her, surprised by that reaction, so exaggerated faced with the invented story. He reminds Rang delicately that emotional story was created about herself. The woman is startled, coming to reality, and asks, confused, if that story was really hers. Rang explains that she doesn't even remember her parents and that she grew up learning art in the courtesan house. She reveals that the jade plaque was actually given by a client and not by her real father. Rang admits that she gave the story an exaggeration, and Guak appears, calling for the two on the street. Guak approaches, bringing the sweets on a skewer that the little boy had requested previously. Rang thanks him joyfully for the sweet treat, while the boy also enjoys his sweet. The warrior observes the scene with a serious and reflective look, while thinking about those notices scattered around. Guak mentions the notices in the square and praises the boy's incredible ability to invent stories. He demonstrates concern for the money spent on the posters, but the boy tells him to stay calm. Young, who guarantees with a confident smile that soon Rang's father will appear. The warrior remains a bit suspicious-faced, with all that certainty from the prodigy boy. Guak realizes he always ends up being totally manipulated by the boy's intelligent conversations. The boy asks for Rang to stay hosted at the Bake Mansion to avoid scammers in the city. He explains that in the family mansion, no fraudster will have the courage to approach her. Guak knows that the boy's excuse is good, but fears the sect leader will harm his beloved. The warrior agrees with the plan and instructs Rang to remain safe at the family mansion. The young woman accepts her beloved's advice and agrees to go to the mansion immediately. Night falls over the region while the plan's preparations follow as planned. The valuable jade plaque rests on the table under the attentive gaze of the boy in the darkness. Yang analyzes the relic in his room, reflecting on the true secrets of that object. The boy knows that the young woman has not the slightest idea of the real power contained in that jade piece. He notes that the plaque contains spiritual cultivation power that served as a protection amulet. Rang had told him she received the piece from a mysterious client when she was working in childhood. The masked man told the little girl that the amulet would protect her and that she should keep it. He also made the girl promise that she would never sell or get rid of that important plaque. The girl found the object beautiful and valuable, and for that reason kept it with her during all these years. But the young woman only used the piece by habit, thinking it was a simple amulet. The object brought a feeling of comfort, as if it were really protecting her. Young. He notes that no one would give something so valuable to a child without an important reason. Suddenly, the boy notices a mysterious presence approaching along the roof. He opens his bedroom window and looks directly at the starry night. With a smile on his face, the boy realizes that the expected person has finally arrived. The mysterious visitor lands with extreme lightness on the property's roof. It is Rang's biological father, the famous public enemy of the martial world, Yeonjuk. The boy holds the jade plaque, knowing it is time to welcome the visitor. Yang, who goes to meet the man, bringing the amulet in his hands to show to him. He stares at the legendary wanderer known by all in the martial world as Yeon. Jek. The full moon illuminates the silent meeting of the two on top of that roof. The boy comments in a relaxed way that the elderly man seems to appreciate the full moon very much. The old man casts a sharp and surprised look upon noting the audacity of that child. The little one remains calm and confident with his hands behind his back, staring at the warrior. The elderly man laughs softly and responds that older people usually sleep much less at night. He questions the boy about the reason for being awake, such an advanced hour of the night. Young Hoi smiles out of the corner of his mouth and begins to explain the true reason for his presence there. He shows the object, saying that the jade plaque was shaking so much that it prevented him from sleeping. The elder is startled, but the boy warns that he borrowed the item from Rang. The youth introduces himself as the adopted son of the Bike family and says he should already know that. The boy reveals openly the true and dangerous identity of the masked old man. The veteran remains in absolute silence, assimilating how that child knows so much. He asks, shocked, how the boy knows that and claims to know even more things. The youth returns to mention the dark past of the famous enemy of the entire martial world. He remembers that in the past, the old man was a relic craftsman who had his life destroyed. The story takes us 20 years into the past, when the craftsman lived quietly. Little Rang admired with joy the beautiful works made by her beloved father. His affectionate wife also praised her husband's unique talent during his work. The family lived in peace and harmony, managing a modest antique shop in the city. Jik enjoyed calm and happy days alongside his wife and his adored daughter, until one day, an evil force interrupted the peace of that family brutally. A dangerous client appeared demanding the services of the renowned relic craftsman. The Blood Death sect ordered the creation of a completely fake treasure map. Without knowing the group's real evil intentions, the craftsman produced the requested map. He worked with dedication without imagining the terrible tragedy that would cause later. The group used the fake copy to lure several warriors into a deadly trap. Several warriors from noble sects were deceived and cornered without any escape. The members of the evil sect attacked the distracted warriors with extreme cruelty. The young master of the Huangpu clan ends up being brutally murdered along with his men. The carnage resulted in the total massacre of all the warriors present at the location. The tragic event became known worldwide as the Massacre of the King's Sword Tome. After the disaster, the craftsman had to flee desperately to save his own life. That the powerful Huangpu clan sought implacable vengeance against the man who made the fake map. He became a fugitive, lost his wife, and ended up separated by force from his dear daughter. Without the courage to face his daughter, the ashamed man disappeared totally from the world. He left only the jade amulet, wishing from the bottom of his heart that she would survive. In his past life, the old man went crazy with pain upon knowing his daughter had been harmed and took his revenge. The boy reflects with determination, asserting that in this life, destiny will be different. Young, who promises to help him live in peace with his daughter if he allies himself with the Bank family. The elderly man asks earnestly for the youth to continue the explanation and tell what else he knows. The two remain on the roof under the night sky, while the conversation gets more serious. Young Hu reveals that Rang's beloved is Gua K, the son of the Red Bridge sect leader. He adds that the sect leader hates the young woman and plans to harm her soon. The old man is deeply disturbed by the terrible revelation about his daughter's danger. The boy confirms the threat and adds that Rang is already being poisoned bit by bit. He explains that slow poisoning is another cruel plan elaborated by the same leader. The villain has been applying small dosages of poison in the medicine that the lady takes daily. This cruel substance would make the young woman weaken and die without raising suspicions of the crime. The elder interrupts the boy's speech, keeping his look hidden in the shadow of his hat. He notes that his daughter is in the mansion and questions the true motives of the boy upon luring him. The old man releases an intimidating aura and demands to know the real objectives behind all of that. An immense pressure of red energy takes hold of the roof to threaten the little master. Despite the veteran's overwhelming strength, the youth only keeps a calm smile on his face. He addresses the elder while preparing a simple movement to contain that energy. With a single step on the ground, the boy dissipates completely the opponent's threatening aura. The old man is stunned to see his energy being annulled easily by such a young boy. Young Hai promises as heir of the family that he only desires to reunify the lady with her father. The veteran wonders, surprised, who is truly that child with such vast knowledge. He stares at the boy's small figure without being able to decipher his true real identity. The elder lets out a long sigh, admitting to himself that age has finally reached him. He states that all sects use dirty tricks and asks for the boy to reveal his real plan. The youth assumes he will use a trick to make the local gangs destroy each other in the end. To conclude this ambitious plan, he asks openly for the help of the experienced craftsman. The next day at the Black family mansion, the developments of that conversation begin to act. Guake discovers, screaming, that his beloved Rang was being poisoned secretly. Yang, who he calms the warrior, warning that the poison was discovered in time and that she will heal. The boy stresses that the poisoning started before she arrived, making it clear who the author is. The warrior widens his eyes upon understanding that the leader of his own sect did that. He questions himself, revolted, about the motives that would lead his father to try to harm his beloved woman. Yang, who he points out that the villain wanted to eliminate the young woman to force a political power marriage. The boy warns firmly that now is not the time to seek approval and demands a choice from him. He puts the warrior against the wall, telling him to choose between his beloved woman or his sect. The man clenches his fist with total strength, facing a devastating dilemma in his heart. Guake recognizes that for his own father, he was always just a political tool for use. He remembers Rang's face and states with affection that he cannot live without her in life. No matter what happens, the warrior commits to protecting his beloved against anyone. The man repeats with absolute conviction that she is the only person who really matters to him. The warrior clenches his hand with fury, decided to take the reins of his own final destiny. He declares with shouts his unwavering decision to protect Rang at any future cost. The big guy remains before the boy, demonstrating that his determination is true and solid. Yang Hoi smiles, satisfied to see that the warrior chose again the love of his entire life. The boy knows that deep down, Guake is a good man and that Rang is the one who keeps him on the good path. The youth knows that bringing him to the family will be easy but needs to reinforce the danger of the situation. He warns that the sect leader will never accept the escape and that they will live fleeing forever. The boy questions provocatively if fragile Rang would endure an entire life of flight. Irritated by the provocation, Guake yells at the boy, telling him to stop playing with the subject. He demands the little one to stop delaying and reveal the plan soon, knowing how cunning the boy is. The boy asks for calm, laughing at the reaction of the giant, who gets quite sharp when it comes to his beloved. Yang summarizes the strategy by saying that to combat evil, they will destroy the rival gangs. Guake is confused, not understanding how the boy intends to create a war between the gangs. Yang, who he reveals he will leak a secret manual directly into the headquarters of the Green Snake Band. A subordinate enters, running into the group's heady-out, shouting desperately for the leader. The chief of the Green Snake Band appears irritated, demanding to know the reason for that entire rush. The henchman hands over a book, revealing the counter-attack technique to defeat the rival sect. The gang chief leafs through the manual in shock, unable to contain his absolute amazement. He analyzes the detailed drawings, noticing the surgical precision of each movement listed. The man celebrates, surprised to see that the book teaches perfectly how to nullify rival arts. The henchman explains that a mysterious master sent the manual, asking for vengeance against the sect. The gang chief celebrates the meeting of destiny and orders that all members learn the technique soon. He lets out an evil laugh, excited to teach a definitive lesson to his old enemies. Night falls on the city, and the preparations for the surprise attack begin to spread. A violent confrontation begins quickly, destroying the silence of that dark night. Without any warning, the Green Snake Band launches a devastating invasion on the rival sect. Although the rival sect possessed double the size, the surprise attack caused great panic. The invaders advance with fury using the new combat techniques against the defenders. The swords clash in an accelerated rhythm, while the defenders try to react to the fight. The sect warriors are horrified to see their blows blocked easily. Each defensive movement is destroyed by the precise knowledge of the enemy's weak points. Dominating all the nullification techniques, the Green Snake Band dominates the fight with ease. The terrifying noise of the weapons echoes throughout the neighborhood, scaring the residents. People run in despair to lock their doors and windows, avoiding the conflict. All houses in the village close their entrances to protect themselves from that bloody war. Due to the violent war between the gangs, the residents avoid going out to the streets of the location. At the Bake Mansion, members comment on the total war that broke out between the two groups. The father instructs the children not to leave the house due to the enormous danger on the village streets. The father warns the young master in particular, and Yang, who he feigns innocence with a confused look. The boy laughs low, and the relative reports how the chaos on the streets worsened drastically in the last few days. They reveal that the Green Snake Band is quartering the rival sect with great advantage. The little master listens to everything with a smile out of the corner of his mouth, seeing his plan progress perfectly. Rumors and gossip about the mysterious master spread quickly to all corners. Who knows that the enemy sect is in panic, trying to discover the origin of the tactics. The tactics were created by him in his past life after facing the sect countless times in combat. Using the old craftsman's talent, the boy created the fake book to be delivered to the enemies. With the first band in action, the boy prepares to leak the second secret manual at the market. He approaches his father, proposing to intervene in the fight so that the family takes advantage of everything. The boy displays a cunning look while explaining exactly how he intends to act in that plan. He suggests that the mansion act as official mediator of the conflict to conquer power and morale. Meanwhile, at the enemy base, the sect members continue getting beaten without managing to react. The Green Snake members mock the overwhelming defeat of their rivals in the middle of the pavilion. The henchman mocks the deplorable state of the opponents, highlighting his band's new strength. The sect men tremble with hatred and rage upon seeing all their strength nullified in the fight. One of the warriors curses, irritated, upon seeing that any attack launched is blocked easily. The attacker advances with his sword ready, prepared to deal the final blow without demonstrating mercy. He unleashes a mortal blow with the blade, shouting for his opponent to accept defeat and die. However, the attack is blocked abruptly by an immense force in the last millisecond. Guake emerges imposingly, intercepting the fatal blow and saving his companion there. The aggressor is startled by the sudden arrival and rants with fury before the warrior. The man fallen on the ground recognizes the warrior and calls him by name, surprised at the rescue. Guek faces the invaders with a terrifying look, irritated by the audacity of the rival band. Guek yells, furious, complaining about the shouting, and threatens to kill everyone there. The surprised men recognize Guek as a first-class master and beg for mercy. A henchman tries to encourage the others, saying they can nullify his attacks with the manual. Yang Hai emerges behind Guek and asks if he heard about the leaked nullification tactic. The warrior turns to the boy and calls him, appearing a little apprehensive in the fight. The boy positions himself next to him, keeping a confident and mysterious smile on his face. The enemies shout, angry, warning that they will have no mercy on the child, but the boy tells them to pipe down. The boy mocks, asking ironically who should have mercy on whom there. The little one takes a secret book and throws the manual directly into Gu-Ak's hands. The warrior holds the book and is shocked upon recognizing the content of the pages. The boy confirms with his head while the adversaries observe without understanding anything. The little villain smiles and warns that it is time to attack the Green Snake Band. He delivers the manual that teaches exactly how to nullify all tactics of that rival band. Gu-Ak widens his eyes, surprised upon realizing that the boy created a nullification manual. The band's henchmen fall into despair upon hearing that their own arts were nullified. They accuse the boy of lying, but the boy says the manual has already been spread through the streets. The little one confirms proudly that copies are already circulating throughout the entire city. He reveals that he gave the secrets to the old craftsman to spread the manuals through the village. Gu-Ak holds the manual firmly and faces the adversaries with a threatening look. The warrior gives a mocking smile, realizing the enormous advantage he has in his hands. The enemies tremble with fear upon seeing that the first-class master now knows everything. Gu-Ak closes the book and calls the opponents to combat with extreme coldness and force. He promises to return all the humiliation he suffered with interest and cruel collections. Panic sets in among the henchmen who fall into despair and try to flee the location. Young Hui watches the confusion from the front row, satisfied to see the terror stamped on them. The dust settles in the area while the situation in the pavilion takes new, surprising turns. With the new knowledge, the sect refuses to accept more attacks without retaliating at height. Gu-Ak challenges the few survivors, asking who will be the next to be defeated. The adversary chief grinds his teeth without knowing how to deal with such a disadvantage in the fight. The desperate henchman asks the chief what they should do to get out alive. The subordinate suggests retreating immediately, but the indignant leader tells him to shut up. Yang Hui notices the total despair of the enemies and decides to advance to the next step of the plan. The boy asks for calm from everyone and says he didn't go there to create an unnecessary fight. He opens his arms, proposing to analyze the current situation in a neutral and objective way. The boy begins his explanation by focusing first on the position of the adversary gang. He remembers that only Gu-Ak manages to learn the first-class technique, while others do not. Furthermore, with several men wounded, continuing to fight would be an absurd risk for them. The boy seeks confirmation from the warrior, who agrees in silence with that logic. The boy gets the gang's name wrong on purpose, irritating the enemy chief quite a bit. He explains that since the rival band has the manual, the fight will bring heavy losses for both. The little one asks if they really want to fight, and the men rant without patience. The chief insists, furious, saying his band will never retreat from a battle that way. Yang Hui closes his eyes and complains in silence about that man's irritating stubbornness. The boy opens a dark look, asking if the man really didn't understand the danger. He reveals that who is truly screwed is them, because the tactics spread through the market. The boy points out the grave situation that affects the entire Akan County region. He asks if the man really thinks the rival band is his only enemy in the area. The chief trembles upon realizing that the other rival gang can also take advantage of this. Yang Hui explains that the third gang will wait for the wear and tear to take the entire territory. The boy mocks that even a child thinks of that, and the leader despairs upon coming to reality. Suddenly, someone steps forward and suggests resolving that entire situation in a different way. The man widens his eyes, surprised to hear that unexpected voice emerge there in the middle of the impasse. He turns quickly and is in shock upon recognizing who just arrived to intervene. The man stammers incredulous upon realizing that it is the respected warrior Mu Rying. The boy celebrates with a huge smile, saying his father arrived at the exact moment. Mu Rying warns that the confrontation will only bring mutual destruction and asks for both sides to retreat out of respect. He guarantees personally the safety of everyone present under the prestigious name of the Bake Mansion. The leader lets out a long sigh, frustrated, knowing he cannot go against such an important figure. Guek realizes that mediation will leave the gangs in great debt to the influential Bake Mansion. He distrusts and looks in the direction of the boy, who continues boasting a quite mischievous smile. The boy winks mockingly, making it clear that he used his own father as a shield since the beginning of everything. Guek decides to accept the mediation, stating that his guild will not continue with that dispute there. Ryang then turns to the other rival gang, waiting for an answer about what they intend to do. Totally cornered and without options, the rival gang leader begins to tremble while trying to say something. He ends up yielding and accepts the proposed terms while the warrior thanks everyone for the cooperation. The warrior smiles and warns that none of the factions should cause confusion near his family's lands. The boy celebrates the plan's success, knowing his father's intervention resolved the conflict perfectly. The youth asks his father to go ahead because he still needs to talk to Guek about his older sister. With the departure of the other guild, the little one prepares to fix the remaining pending problems there. Suddenly, the boy is surprised upon being pulled abruptly by the collar of his clothing. Guek holds him in the air, facing the little one in a quite intimidating way and full of doubts in his head. The brute points out that everything happened exactly as planned and asks what their next step will be. He complains that he just didn't finish off all the adversaries because of that strategy created by the boy. The warrior shows the combat manual, surprised by the fact that technique is really legitimate and effective. He demands to know who is behind everything, because a child could never create something so brilliant alone. The youth realizes the leader is not as dumb as he appears, but prefers to keep his mysteries hidden. He says he still cannot reveal anything, but promises he will soon introduce him to his mysterious allies. The boy finishes by saying these people share a very deep past with the warrior himself. The day begins to give way to nightfall, while the setting around the temple becomes completely calm. The warrior is thoughtful and quite confused upon trying to imagine who these people from his past would be. The boy guarantees he only wants the good of everyone and would never set a trap to harm his companion. He asks with an angelic look if he ever did anything bad to harm the warrior. Guek faces that cute expression suspicious, but cannot find reasons to doubt the child. He gets uncomfortable with the boy's audacity and begins to ask himself if he is being manipulated the whole time. The youth notices the penetrating look of the man and feels a slight tension upon being observed so closely. The brute soon pushes these thoughts away for thinking it impossible for a boy to manage to deceive him that way. The man gets irritated suddenly, demanding to know the reason for that suspicious look directed at him at that instant. The youth changes the subject quickly and asks if the warrior really wants to know what the next steps will be. He hands over a mysterious book, instructing the warrior to train all his men with those instructions. The warrior is left open-mouthed upon looking at the book, and the little one asks if he manages to recognize the technique. The youth explains that manual contains the perfect reverse tactic to combat the enemy axe technique. The story then goes back in time to show what happened a few days ago on a calm night. The boy found himself on the roof of a large temple talking in secret with a very wise elderly man. The old master questions, intrigued, about the concept of creating a counter-attack for a defensive tactic. He asks if this plan is such mutual destruction strategy that the youth had mentioned previously. The boy confirms seriously, demonstrating total conviction about the direction things would take from there on. He details that the first step was delivering the counter-attack so that the rival group would start the offensive. This way, the enemy band would attack with total confidence, believing they would have an easy and guaranteed victory. At the moment things got bad, they would spread the new attackers' weakness throughout the entire market. With this, the invaders would pay extremely dearly for the arrogance of falling straight into that brilliant trap. This way, all the gangs that hate the enemy band would unite to attack all at once. The elderly man swallows hard-faced with the scary and brilliant mind that little youth demonstrates having. The old man admits the plan seems brilliant, but still demonstrates having doubts about how it will work. He focuses his look in a quite serious way while he begins to think about the real possibilities of that strategy. The master points out that for the plan to work, the secret technique sent to the band needs to be totally true. Surprised upon confirming the veracity, he asks where the youth managed to obtain such a valuable manuscript. The little one sketches an enigmatic look, maintaining suspense about his true origins at that moment. With a smile out of the corner of his mouth, the boy prepares to give an answer that will shock his interlocutor completely. He reveals without any ceremony that he was the creator himself of that secret combat technique so complex. The elder enters a complete state of denial, incapable of believing that a child did all that alone. He accuses the boy of mocking his face, saying that must be just some silly illusion trick. The youth reflects seriously, knowing he cannot waver or lie in a sloppy way to that elderly master. He knows he needs to win the old man's trust, but understands it would be madness to reveal he returned in time. Breathing deeply, the boy decides to adopt an alternative approach that seems minimally convincing to the elder. He simply shouts with all the conviction in the world, saying he is a great genius in his second reincarnation. The elder simply freezes from so much perplexity, faced with that scandalous declaration made by the little boy. He remains in absolute silence, observing the heroic and brilliant pose the boy makes right in front of him. The location is taken by a comic atmosphere full of doubts, while the two stare at each other without saying anything more. The boy keeps firm in his role, so as not to spoil the lie, knowing that demonstrating shame would ruin everything. The elder hits his hand on the table, demonstrating he made a serious decision after that comic moment. He holds the book thoughtful, reflecting if it is really worth following the guidance of that boy so peculiar. He ends the jokes and decides to simply ignore that crazy story about reincarnation and genius. The little one then promises that when everything ends, they will be welcomed with honors as special guests at the Bake Mansion. Under the bright light of the moon, the elderly warrior turns, facing the cold wind of the night with a thoughtful look. The youth explains they will need to change their names, but will have the absolute protection of his family against enemies. He stresses that the elder will finally be able to live in peace and safety alongside his dear daughter without needing to flee. Those words touch deeply the heart of the old master who for years had suffered with that fugitive life. He remembers with affection and melancholy the time he could live quietly alongside his united family. The old master remembers with pain the 20 years of suffering he passed far from his daughter after being pursued by the world. He states with determination that he would anything to recover his daughter's affection and return to being called father. The elder smiles out of the corner of his mouth, admitting that youth's proposals are always impossible to be rejected by him. The boy only returns with a friendly look, knowing he managed to touch the right point to seal that alliance. The elder asks what he in fact needs to do, since he knows the plan involves much more than falsifying scrolls. With a sharp and imposing look, the little one reveals the true objective is to topple the rival guild leader. He instructs to spare the target's life, focusing only on destroying his energy center to neutralize him for good. The elder gets tense and thoughtful with the gravity of that secret and dangerous mission ordered by the child. The old man tries to dodge, saying he is a common elderly man, but the boy remembers that a common elderly man wouldn't survive hunts. The youth raises his hand firmly, demonstrating that the idle talk ended and that it is time to act for real. He finishes the conversation demonstrating deep respect and trust in the secret skills that the master possesses. Faced with such determination, the elder only sighs, without strength to rebuff the relentless logic of the boy. He admits in a joking tone that little youth really knows how to put him in quite complicated situations. The master accepts the plan and asks for the mission's details before receiving a generous reward days later. A colossal amount of precious silver coins shines intensely inside the newly arrived wooden chest. The boy's father and the servants are left jaw-dropped, unable to believe in the immense amount of wealth received. The father asks the youth what they should do with all that money, while the boy sketches a smile of satisfaction. He suggests investing everything in the purchase of a large inn to create a prosperous business in the name of the prestigious family. The boy reveals that the location chosen for this great enterprise has already been defined previously in his plans. He points out that a specific inn in the county region would be the perfect starting point for his next steps. The chest of silver coins is opened again, illuminating the environment and leaving all those present euphoric. The man of finances cries of emotion upon seeing so many silver coins shining in front of him after long years. The servant celebrates, saying they will finally be able to pay the house's pending bills and repair the damaged roof. He yells in a quite enthusiastic way, calling the boy, who begins to get a bit scared with that reaction. The servant says the boy is a lucky charm, while complaining that the house chief only spends with poetry and chivalry. Hearing that entire complaint about his attitudes, the boy's father clears his throat in a quite awkward way. He apologizes to the manager, admitting shyly that his supposed incompetence must have caused many problems. The manager quickly tries to soften the mood, saying practicing chivalry is good, but taking care of finances also matters. He changes the subject, asking if the boy hadn't mentioned previously the plan of buying a new commerce. The boy confirms, animated, pointing out that the chosen location is very famous and possesses great professional cooks. The father ponders, worried, not knowing if the current owner would really be willing to sell such a lucrative business. With total confidence, the youth says to leave this little detail of the negotiation entirely under his responsibility. He gives a thumbs up, guaranteeing he possesses a relationship of great proximity with the current owner. The next day, the boy arrives, shouting joyfully the warrior's name at the entrance of his large inn. He asks with an innocent smile if the man would agree to sell that location for the exact value they received as a prize. Akai listens to that bold proposal and keeps facing the child with a look of total surprise and distrust. He repeats the question, confused, without managing to process correctly the audacity of the little one in wanting to buy his establishment. Totally incredulous, he extends his arm and holds the child's head in a quite brutal and direct way. The brute rants that that place is a true gold mine in the region and would never be handed over so easily like that. The boy plays his trump card, revealing he plans to leave the warrior's sister in charge of managing all the commerce. The warrior changes posture right away and begins to laugh of joy while he accepts the deal without thinking twice. The little one sketches a discreet smile, knowing exactly how to manipulate the feelings of that big guy with ease. Meanwhile, in another part of the kingdom, the situation begins to get tense at the official headquarters of the enemy band. The interior of the large palace exhibits luxurious details that show the immense power accumulated by that rival faction. The leader of the enemy faction bellows, furious upon discovering that the most lucrative inn in the region was sold for so little. He curses the subordinate as a complete idiot, pointing out the gigantic financial loss that stupid sale will bring. The warrior remains in absolute silence, faced with the implacable fury of his master, who continues yelling loudly. In a quite calm way, the big guy interrupts the sermon, calling the enraged man father. He extends his arm with firmness and hands over the secret book, asking for the man to take a look at the content. The leader widens his eyes in a complete state of shock upon reading the first pages of that mysterious manuscript. He realizes immediately that it is the perfect counter-attack for the secret martial technique of his own guild. The son invents he used the money from the inn's sale to buy secretly the valuable combat manual at the market. The leader begins to let out insane laughs of pure happiness, congratulating his son on the supposed brilliant deal he made. He praises the son's maturity, believing he finally left aside the silly distractions to focus on the band. The elder comments in an acidic way about the beloved woman, which generates a wave of silent fury in the warrior's heart. He clenches his own fist with extreme strength, trying to hold himself faced with the insults uttered against his beloved. The old master notices the sudden tension in the air and diverts his look from the manuscript, demonstrating a slight distrust. The big guy disguises quickly, maintaining composure while asking what his master just said. The leader leaves the subject for later, animated with the certainty that his sect now possesses no weakness anymore. He yells with a maniacal look, stating that the first step will be to crush completely the rival enemy faction. He completes, saying they will become the most powerful criminal guild in the entire region after this historic victory. Evil laughs echo throughout the palace, while the destruction plans begin to be traced in secret. A new day dawns, bringing an atmosphere of extreme tranquility and harmony for the lands of the Bike Mansion. The narration points out that after the successful mediation of the conflict, the family's prestige began to grow quickly. The local bandits stopped spreading chaos through the region, bringing safety back for the residents of Akan. The street merchants reopened their stalls, bringing enough joy and new life for the local village. Manager Hand shows himself a bit awkward with the enormous wave of gratitude demonstrated by the village people. The peasants insist on handing over simple gifts as a way to thank for the protection offered by the family. One of them tells that his son saved himself from bandits after fleeing to the lands protected by the famous mansion. The peasant jokes, saying he will spread bad rumors in case they don't accept the humble offerings of vegetables. Desperate, the manager runs after the master and the boy to report the new happenings that emerged there. The man asks, surprised, if more gifts from grateful residents continue arriving without stopping at the entrance. The father says that even with difficulties, people bring gifts out of gratitude and orders the manager to accept everything. He plans to gather all the donations received to later redistribute everything back to the needy of the village. The man smiles sweetly and asks his son if he would be willing to help him with that charity task. The boy accepts promptly, while the narration highlights the contrast of the mansion's success with the chaos of the rest of the region. The setting in the territory of the neighboring criminal gangs begins to turn into a true hell of fire and total destruction. One of the enemy warriors is hit fully by a violent blow and yells of pain while blood splashes in the air. The bandits face each other without any mercy while the chaos between the rival factions reaches its maximum level. The rival gang tries to resist bravely against the invasion, but its men continue being defeated one after the other. Without managing to deal with so many opponents who knew their weaknesses, they end up being forced to surrender quickly. With the humiliating defeat, the rival guild simply ceases to exist and disappears forever from the history of that region. Later, the leader of the enemy sect reads a scroll, indignant for having been challenged to a mortal duel by another band. He rants, furious, saying the challengers lost their self-respect just because the other rival gang was destroyed. A counselor asks for caution, alerting that someone mysterious is spreading the weaknesses of all local bands. The chief laughs with disdain, stating he already knows very well of the existence of a traitor spreading those combat secrets. He guarantees there are no reasons for panic, and that it is enough to ensure these dirty tricks don't work against his men. Clenching his fist with strength, the leader declares that the old order of the three great dominant factions reached the end. The villain's look fills with a blind ambition upon decreeing that only his band will reign absolute in those lands. Thoughts of glory, he mounts his horse, preparing his army for the decisive battle that approaches. The warriors ride swiftly through the dark forest during the night under the command of their imposing and furious leader. Suddenly, a mysterious figure emerges from the shadows and lands in an extremely silent way in the middle of the path. The enemy leader stops his horse immediately upon spotting that unknown silhouette blocking his passage. The elder reveals himself under the moonlight, pronouncing the full name of the feared leader, who is right before him. The guards advance with their horses, irritated by that inexplicable audacity of stopping their boss's army. The chief observes the movement of his guards, maintaining an attentive look and quite distrustful of that situation. The old master in the hat repeats, calmly, that finally arrived the moment for them to meet face to face on that night. With a quick and lethal movement, a sword blow cuts the air with extreme precision in the direction of the attackers. The guards are knocked down from their horses in a blink of an eye without even managing to react to the old man's attack. Shocked to see his men fall with so much ease, the chief yells, demanding to know the true identity of the old man. The wounded subordinate rants, furious, questioning how the elderly master dares to block the path of an authority. The enemy leader focuses the look on the adversary, realizing he is not dealing with just any opponent in that forest. He feels an overwhelming spiritual pressure emanating from the elder's body and begins to sweat coldly with true terror. The elderly master reveals only a part of his face, determined, maintaining a cold and extremely threatening aura. The enemy chief enters despair upon realizing the gigantic disparity of power between him and the mysterious warrior. Realizing the danger, he orders frantically that all his men kill the old man as quickly as they can. The soldiers run desperate, trying to unleash quick blows, but end up missing all the attacks against the master. The elder moves with impressive agility, concentrating an immense amount of magic energy in his hand. A bright and destructive light emanates from his fingers, indicating that he will release a devastating attack against the band. The warriors are thrown through the air, shouting in agony under the overwhelming impact of that implacable energy. He lands softly on the ground after neutralizing almost the entire enemy army with just a single blow of power. The survivors enter absolute panic, shouting for help while trying to flee from that monster in the form of an elderly man. The best and most promising combatants of the enemy guild lie defeated on the ground after a single and simple attack. The leader of the faction is left completely paralyzed with terror upon witnessing the instant annihilation of all his troop. The mysterious master resurges right in front of the scared chief, facing him with a coldness to freeze the spine. With a devastating impact, the old man unleashes a swift blow that makes the horse rear and throws the enemy leader to the ground. The villain tries to rise with difficulty, letting out a moan of pure pain and despair faced with the imminent defeat. Fallen to the ground, he yells, furious, demanding to know who was responsible for hiring that implacable assassin. He tries to guess the names of the region's rival guilds, while the elderly master only stares at him with deep contempt. The elder responds dryly that the opponent doesn't need to know anything before preparing the final blow of mercy. A precise and devastating punch hits fully the villain's abdomen, who feels the impact tear his entire body from within. The chief bellows in extreme agony upon realizing that his spiritual energy center was completely destroyed forever. A large explosion of light and smoke consumes the location, sealing the destiny of the defeated villain. The fallen man begins to spit blood while realizing that he lost all his martial abilities. He trembles with pain, feeling that his life force and his spiritual power were completely destroyed. With a trembling look, the defeated warrior realizes, desperate, that his limbs simply do not move. The old master warns coldly that he promised to spare the opponent's life, and for that reason he will not kill him there. He says that the destruction of the villain's spiritual energy center is already enough to fulfill the promise. He turns his back and tells the adversary to live the rest of his days, suffering with deep regret. The defeated man only manages to whisper with impotent hatred while seeing his executioner move away into the darkness. The cry of fury and despair echoes through the forest while the wise man walks quietly back to his path. The elder looks thoughtful at the horizon, feeling a mix of relief and duty accomplished after that difficult battle. He remembers his dear daughter, knowing that now he will finally be able to give her a much happier life. With firm steps, the elderly master walks in the direction of his new destiny, focused on protecting his only daughter. The story advances a few days, showing that peace has finally begun to reign in the entire region after the duel. The boy eats a bowl of hot ramen with an extremely cute and satisfied smile on his youthful face. Seated right in front of him, Guakif faces him in a quite suspicious way, intrigued by such happiness. The warrior asks the reason for that smile, and the boy responds that he is simply very happy to see him there. He celebrates internally the absolute success of his secret strategy that worked exactly as planned. The loss of power of the former leader caused a severe internal dispute over the command of the entire rival enemy guild. With so much internal fighting, the weakened guild ended up dispersing and abandoning the region for good. With the other rival gangs completely undone, the balance of power in the region changed radically for the better. The main criminal organizations suffered devastating losses that forced them to retreat from their activities. Thus, a true era of peace and tranquility finally established itself for all the citizens of the region. The positive reputation of the famous Bake Mansion grew so much that all the residents began to admire it even more. The youth plans to take the next step of his strategy, focusing his efforts on the strong warrior in front of him. He knows this is the ideal moment to bring the big guy, definitely to the side of his own family. The boy suggests, in a relaxed way, that the warrior join officially the elite forces of the Bake Mansion. The brute is totally confused and questions from where that sudden and quite unusual proposal arose. He jokes, saying it would be easier for the little one to eliminate the competitors, to assume command of everything alone. He faces the boy, maintaining a serious expression, but feels a slight cold sweat faced with the answer he might hear. The big guy waits in silence for the child's reaction, who continues observing him with much calm and patience. The little one responds with seriousness that he would never do something so terrible and prefers to follow paths much fairer. He asks if the warrior will simply accept the proposal or prefers to continue living in that dangerous way. Suddenly, a surprise attack coming from the ceiling cuts the air in their direction, demanding an immediate reaction from the boy. The masked invader is hit by a quick counter attack and retreats, startled by the skill of the young opponent. He clicks his teeth, frustrated upon realizing that his ambush plan failed miserably in front of the two of them. The warrior rises, irritated, noting that the assassins managed to track them to that commercial establishment. The boy points out that the warrior's own companions continue sending assassins to eliminate him without stopping. The warrior complains that he already warned he has no interest in the leader's position, but the greedy opponents will never believe. The little one suggests that marrying his sister and living in the mansion is an infinitely better option than dying fighting. The big guy questions, thoughtful, if it would really make sense for a man like him to integrate into the noble Bake family. He remembers that the entire village knows him as a criminal from the underworld, and the allied factions were decimated. The boy retorts with tranquility, saying no one will dare to complain about the new alliance due to their prestige. He completes by saying with joy that his own father is with arms wide open to receive him as a new member. The father confirms, saying he would never reject someone willing to abandon the life of crime to start from scratch. The big guy is surprised by the ease of the acceptance, while the house chief dictates the rules of conduct. Assuming his respectful leader posture, the mansion chief prepares to give his first official orders. He orders the big guy to perform one good deed per day to prove his true value before everyone there. The warrior focuses his look, absorbing that unusual mission that will totally change his life of crimes. He joins his hands in a traditional gesture of deep respect, accepting the command of his new master and leader. He bows with loyalty, swearing to abandon forever his old title of assassin to serve the family. He states in a loud voice that he will fulfill to the letter the order received to conquer his new and honored title. Guac finally becomes an official member of the Bake Mansion. Suddenly, someone starts running excitedly while letting out a cry of joy. The girl is extremely excited to learn that they are going on an outing. She runs toward a puppet show and asks her brother to watch it with her. The girl asks for some sweets and a very pretty hair clip that she wants to get, but someone gently holds the little girl back and asks her to slow down. The young woman reminds the girl about their promise to go out together and asks her not to run away. The little girl looks at Sister Rang, showing great affection for her. She says they went out to celebrate that her sister has recovered, but the boy complains. He asks, annoyed, how she could disappear into the crowd, and if she even has any money. While they chat happily, someone watches the whole scene from afar. The young protagonist and the big guy watch the girls playing. The warrior remarks that he is very happy to see Sister Rang fully recovered. He confesses that his world fell apart when he learned she had been poisoned. He adds that the mansion is a much better place for her than the brothel. They appear suddenly, joyfully asking to buy some treats. The two are paralyzed, watching the exaggerated excitement of the two girls. The young boy jokes that she recovered a little too well and asks for a sweet as well. The protagonist looks sideways behind him, feeling that something is going on. He wonders where the most important person of that encounter is. A mysterious figure wearing a large straw hat observes the group from a distance. The old master remembers when the protagonist said they would go on an outing. He recalls the young boy insisting so much that he should be part of this trip. The elderly man just watches the group having fun in the middle of the busy street. He looks fixedly at his daughter with thoughts full of longing. He becomes emotional seeing how his daughter has grown and become a beautiful woman. When the elderly man decides to leave, the young boy notices and says he already knew everything. He confronts the old man, asking why he is leaving after coming from so far away. The protagonist says that he arrived just in time and that he should go speak to his daughter. The elder hesitates a lot, not quite knowing how to react to that demand. He remembers that he only caused pain in the past and feels he does not deserve to be called father. The old master states that just watching his daughter from afar is enough, but the young boy does not accept that excuse and faces him with total seriousness. He says the master must stay close to her to make up for all the lost time. The protagonist asks if he wants her to be alone on the day of her wedding. He warns that her father must be there in case her groom decides to break her heart. Suddenly, the big warrior appears right behind them, quite annoyed with the conversation. He shouts, saying he will cherish the ground she walks on while the young boy tries to calm him down. The young woman asks the big guy to leave the boy alone, and he tries to hide his anger. The elderly man is extremely moved seeing the group's warm interaction. He remembers his late wife, feeling the weight of memories from the past. At that moment, young Rang looks to the side and seems to finally notice something. All the others also turn and face the elderly man standing nearby. The elder panics completely, thinking he caused a big misunderstanding there, but the girl runs in his direction and hugs him tightly, calling him father. He is left completely speechless as he feels his daughter's warm embrace. The father asks, astonished, how she recognized him, and she mentions the jade plaque. She reveals that she always knew the man who gave her the plaque was her father. She confesses that she never forgot the look of the father she had missed her whole life. She shows the jade plaque, revealing she kept it safe exactly as he asked. The elderly man says he didn't suffer so much on the journey, and that the only difficult thing was the immense longing. His daughter asks him never to leave again, now that they have finally reunited. She cries tears of joy, asking to stay by his side and be a real daughter to him. He calls her by name, deeply moved by all that love from his daughter. The father accepts her request and promises he will never leave her alone again in life. The two embrace affectionately, sealing that emotional promise of union. The young protagonist watches the scene, happy to have helped unite that family. He hugs the other little girl, thinking about how it all ended in the best way. He reflects that both were able to escape their tragic destinies from the past. Suddenly, a strange noise interrupts the boy's calm thoughts. The big guy starts crying uncontrollably with happiness for his beloved. He swears on his knees that he will make the young woman very happy, making the old master laugh awkwardly. Even the feared warrior kneels with respect before his future father-in-law. Protagonist jokes, thinking if that is the true and inexplicable power of love. Time passes, and red flower petals cover the sky over the great mansion. The village residents comment curiously about a wedding that will take place there. An old lady asks if they haven't heard all the news yet. She explains that the big ceremony is for the leader of the rehabilitation pavilion. The entire entrance to Bake Mansion is decorated flawlessly for the big party. The two betrothed appear dressed in the traditional and beautiful red clothes. The bride seems to be extremely radiant and happy with the long-awaited day. The big guy tries to maintain a serious posture, but is visibly moved. His face turns completely red with embarrassment in front of so many guests. The protagonist laughs at the warrior and asks if he is really that happy. The warrior gets annoyed with the boy's teasing while his father-in-law laughs in the background. The elderly master watches that whole joyful scene, maintaining a gentle smile on his face. He thinks with gratitude that he never imagined living long enough to see his daughter marry. The elderly man says that he can now die without regrets, but the woman soon scolds him. She warns that he needs to stay alive to take care of future grandchildren and his son-in-law. The old man feels blessed and realizes that there are still many good things to come. The little girl watches everything with a huge and very cute smile on her face. She admires the bride, thinking about how incredibly stunning she looks. The boy asks the girl to sit properly, but she continues praising the bride. She asks if she will also be able to wear a beautiful wedding dress when she grows up. The protagonist remembers with sadness that in his past life, she never had nice clothes. He recalls how she only suffered in the past, taking care of her sick parents. He focuses his gaze on her, taken by a great determination to make her happy. The boy puts his hand on her shoulder and firmly guarantees that she will. He promises that he will make sure to give her the most beautiful wedding of all. The girl asks, all excited, if that is really a true promise. She celebrates, jumping for joy with the positive answer from her dear brother. The young boy smiles back, happy to see his little sister's contagious joy. He swears that he will change everyone's destiny and bring happiness to the Bake Mansion. The clear sky over the mansion marks the beginning of a new and prosperous era for everyone. The story moves forward, showing what happens a few days after the big ceremony. The patriarch of the Bak family appears, quite surprised by a sudden gesture. The elderly master stands before him with a serious and determined expression. He respectfully asks the leader of the house to accept the mysterious gift. The master spreads some very old manuals on the office desk. The patriarch widens his eyes in shock upon realizing the immense value of that. He realizes, shocked, that those are the secret manuals of the true Bak family martial arts. The elderly master explains that the two techniques were the original martial arts passed down by the family. He says that crucial parts of these techniques ended up being lost over time many years ago. Thus, the descendants of the family spent their entire lives trying to restore these lost arts. The leader of the family tries to understand the situation and asks the master directly. He wants to know how the elderly man managed to get his hands on such secret techniques. The elder reveals with a distant look that it all started happening while he was still in his youth. A heavy storm was falling in the middle of a dark and gloomy forest years ago. At that time, the elderly master was very weak and helpless under that torrential rain. He was on the verge of death, feeling that his journey would reach its end in that deserted place. Suddenly, a mysterious figure wearing a straw hat appeared before him in the forest. Destiny led him to eventually join the famous Shadow Ghost Gate sect. The Grand Master of that faction collected techniques and managed to obtain the original Bake arts. With the Grand Master's death, he had forgotten the arts until destiny brought them back. Now old, he wishes to return the techniques to repay the rescue of his beloved daughter. The patriarch refuses, saying that helping those in need is simply the natural way of the world. He states that it would be impossible to accept a treasure of such value so easily. The old man counters, saying that his daughter's life is worth much more than any secret technique. He adds that these books belong, by right, to the history of the Bak family itself. The protagonist thinks, surprised to discover the master's past in that famous dark sect. This explains all his impressive dodging ability and his lethal assassin techniques. The young boy advises his father to simply accept the books once and for all. He says that refusing too much could make the master and his daughter quite uncomfortable with everything The boy looks quite conspiratorially at the elderly man, who nods back in agreement. The family leader finally lets out a slight smile, convinced by his son's words. He accepts the manuals, stating that he will no longer feel ashamed before his ancestors. He celebrates that the family's martial arts will finally make a gigantic leap forward. The boy sketches a smile of satisfaction upon seeing the absolute success of his secret plan. Night falls, and the full moon shines intensely in the sky, bringing great peace to the place. In the middle of the bamboo grove, the young boy thanks the elderly master for their excellent cooperation. The boy celebrates, saying that their whole act was absolutely perfect. The proud old man replies that that copy was his greatest work of martial forgery. He warns that this is the last time he uses his ability to forge martial arts books. The elderly master drinks his tea thoughtfully, while reflecting on the path of the plan. He questions whether the young boy sought him out from the beginning, just to get that manual. The boy replies calmly that, in fact, he had a very different plan at the beginning. He reveals that all of that was just a brilliant improvisation created at the right time. The young boy takes a step forward with total confidence, confirming his great intelligence. He states with a victorious smile that everything went exactly as expected. The elderly man raises a doubt and asks why the boy himself did not deliver the books. The boy ponders that no one would believe an 8-year-old child with sacred books. The elder disagrees, saying his father would certainly believe any word of his. The young boy changes his expression, falling into absolute silence at that observation by the master. He notes intrigued that the elder does not seem to have any doubts about his true origin. The boy asks about the fact that he himself created that incredible martial technique. The elder just lets out a thoughtful sound. While staring at the boy in a mysterious way, he comments that he has already traveled the whole world and witnessed all kinds of bizarre things. He jokes, saying the boy might have the mind of a centenarian master in a young body. The boy laughs awkwardly to hide his nervousness, while the elder says it is just a joke. The protagonist thinks to himself that astute elderly man knows much more than he says. The young boy listens in silence, maintaining a very serious and focused countenance. The boy says that it is easier for people to believe an elder than a small child. The old master understands and promises to keep that secret absolutely as a form of gratitude. He states with total loyalty that he would never repay such kindness with betrayal. The protagonist comforts the elder, saying he fully trusts his word. The elderly man thinks that the young boy is the greatest blessing the Bake Mansion has ever received in its history. But the boy disagrees internally while he focuses his thoughts on the past. He reflects that having found his current father was his greatest and best blessing. He knows that if it were not for him, he would have died alone, abandoned on the streets. Or perhaps he would have become a terrible man, full of hatred in his heart. But the family's affection completely changed the course of his tragic existence. For a small beggar, abandoned and aimless, everything seemed completely lost. It was his father who reached out a hand and brought a new light to his dark life. He taught the young boy all the true beauty and the value of being alive. The father showed through his actions the real meaning of justice and kindness. It is for this reason that the protagonist is able to live so happily in the present. The elder understands the boy's feeling upon observing his eyes shining with pride. The two agree in silence that heaven always rewards good people. The day dawns sunny, and life in the great mansion remains busy. Suddenly, a cry of surprise echoes from inside one of the mansion's rooms. The big guy bellows indignantly upon hearing the proposal to accept criminals into the family. He says that most of them are rotten and that good people like him do not grow on trees. The boy counters, saying that he only turned into someone decent because of Sister Rang. The warrior shouts, outraged, asking if the boy is calling him a monster. The boy just smiles and tries to calm the brute down while dodging another blow. Is quite impressed with the incredible agility of the young protagonist. The boy says that that kind of luck in destiny does not happen to just anyone. He breaks into a playful smile, revealing that that was just what he meant to say. The big guy squeezes his head playfully, complaining about his audacity. The patriarch of the mansion enters the courtyard and catches the big guy's attention at that moment. Rang and her father appear, laughing and comment on how the two are always fighting and having fun. The warrior gets startled upon seeing his wife and releases the boy immediately, looking awkward. The patriarch smiles gently upon seeing the good coexistence of everyone in his home. The groom asks what brings them there, and his father-in-law says he met his daughter on the way. He changes the subject and asks the protagonist to explain better about the criminals. The leader of the mansion states that he would very much like to hear all the details of the plan. They enter a luxurious meeting room to discuss the important strategy. The boy begins by citing an ancient proverb about how opportunities are rare. He explains that the ideal moment is very difficult to find, but extremely easy to lose. The boy points out that the Bake Mansion is experiencing a mixture of opportunity and crisis. He remembers that the internal war ended up destroying the main criminal factions. With that fall of power, a great chance arose for the Bake Mansion to grow fast. The weakening of rivals opened the perfect space for them to dominate the region. But he warns that powerful enemies will also arise to try to contain their advance. He suggests recruiting the warriors who are left aimless after the fall of their gangs. The boy states with a confident smile that they would be enormous military help. The two men listen to the proposal with attention, thoughtful about the pros and cons. The big warrior hesitates a little, showing a slight hint of doubt. He remembers some old companions from his guild who sought him out a short while ago. They were desperate, asking for shelter ever since their guild went into decline. The boy points out excitedly, saying that this situation is the perfect opportunity they needed. He says that even in secret, many of these men want to change their lives and should be recruited. The boy points out that some criminals will be completely irredeemable because they are too bad. He points to the big guy and says that he will be responsible for dealing with those lost cases. He says that the warrior must eliminate the worst criminals, leaving the big guy completely shocked. The patriarch praises the idea, saying that reforming criminals and strengthening the family is excellent. The warrior gets scared of the enormous responsibility of becoming the master of rehabilitation. Patriarch uses his classic psychological pressure to make his son-in-law accept the leadership position. With no way out, he accepts the rehabilitation post while the boy has fun with the situation. The protagonist laughs, knowing how easy it is to manipulate the brute for the good of the Bake Mansion.